was the item about the TICs, David? So
If you click on to get that page bigger.
Welcome members and officers to the meeting of the Economy and Development Select Committee here today. Before I start with...
Would you like to sit here? Yes, fine.
Morning.
Okay, I'll start again. Welcome to members and officers here today and to our Economy and Development Select Committee meeting. Before I go into the main agenda, we'll first just go around and introduce ourselves for the purpose of the live streaming. So I'm County Councillor Sarah Jones and I'm Chair of the committee.
Hazel Eilert, Scrutiny.
Nicola Perry, Senior Democracy Officer.
Kelly Byrne, Chief Officer, Innovation and Enterprise.
Nicola Edwards, Food and Tourism Manager.
Shirley Wigham, Housing.
Mark Hand, Planning and Housing.
Cass Fallon, Head of Economy and Innovation.
Douglas Edwards, Member for Grovefield in Abergavenny.
Fiona Wilton, Wye Valley and Forest of Dean Tourism Association.
David Davey, Councillor St Kin's Mark Ward, Chepstow Committee Member.
Dave Evans, Member of the Economy Committee.
Councillor John Prosser, Committee Member.
County Councillor Alan Wintle, Committee Member.
Thank you very much and very warm welcome to everyone and particularly to Fiona. Thank you very much for taking the time to come and join us today for agenda item 6. So we'll move straight on to agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence.
We've received apologies from County Councillor Sue White and Bob Hayward.
And so on to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. As and when. Okay. Agenda item 3, which is public open forum. Don't believe we have any members of the public or anything to highlight under this item. Nope. Okay. And agenda item 4, which is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of June 2016. Members, we're going to defer this item to the next committee meeting as the minutes that we have are for the wrong meeting, so we won't have had a chance to have reviewed those in detail. So we'll move straight on to agenda item 5, that's to scrutinise the year-end performance reporting together with the outcome agreements and improvement plan. Kelly, you're going to present to us on these and then we'll take questions from members. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, good morning, members. First of all, apologies from Matthew Gatehouse, who is going to be here this morning to present the performance reports. Matt's on a course in London, so I'm going to go through it as it relates primarily to my service areas anyway. So just to recap, the 3 reports that you have as a composite in front of you this morning contain the outcome agreement results, which is our outcome agreement framework that we have and agree every year with Wales Government, the improvement objectives and year-end performance against those, and the national performance indicators. So you've got a complete set of all of the measures and metrics that make up the performance suite for Economy and Development Select Committee. So just to remind you in terms of the outcome agreement, because it's something that we've done historically, and as I say, we agree every year with Wales Government. So 15-16 was the last year of that outcome agreement. So we assessed ourselves as successful overall and fully successful for the objectives that actually fall under the remit of this select committee. So fully successful, I think, is quite something, especially given the backdrop and obviously diminishing resources. So we've not just managed to sustain performance against some of those outcome targets that we've been set, but we've more than fully complied. We've showed high levels of success. So in some of the work that we've done, for example, around tourism and events, some of the stuff that we've done around digital and business development, we've obviously shown some great outcomes there. So that means we get our full payment from Wales Government in respect of those performance measures, which is built into our base budget. In terms of the improvement objectives, it gives you an opportunity this morning to have some early scrutiny of those, which will help us then inform stage 2 of our forward improvement plan, which we'll be asking Council to approve sometime in the autumn. So the objectives covered by this committee, again, in line with the outcome agreement, have been rated as good, which, again, you know, I pay testament to staff who've worked very hard to accomplish that quite significant outcome. And then the performance measures that you ordinarily see quarterly as a committee, they're the things that get reported as part of the performance scorecard to Cabinet on a quarterly basis. And again, we're showing good in terms of progress in some of those areas. I do have to highlight 2 areas where we've seen some declines in terms of performance, and there is a marginal decline in terms of our performance around disabled facilities grants, which I'm sure we can discuss in more detail as we go through the report, and some declines in delivery around affordable housing. And Mark and Shirley are here this morning because I'm sure that's something we want to get into debate around. So I'll say no further in terms of introducing the report, but obviously we're very happy to take questions and explore in some detail any areas which you may like to highlight and have some considerations around.
Okay, members, so I think we're clear here. We're looking at both the improvement objectives and the outcome agreements, and under those, under the improvement objectives, we're looking at improvement objectives 3 and 4, and the outcome agreement, outcome 3. I think it's worth being mindful that we did have the MBE report by Kath at the last meeting, so we looked at some of the year-end results there, so some of that would have been covered, but of course if you want to raise again, that's no problem. Because we're going to be taking both reports together, I think it's worth if you could just highlight which page number you're referring to, just so that we're clear, because we'll be taking both of them together. And on that basis, members, do you have any questions you'd like to raise with the officers? Councillor Prosser?
Okay, then let's dive in, shall we? Housing, declining performance. Obviously, we're economy and development, and that's closely linked to provision of housing. We want people to stay in our communities, and we want people to come to our communities to make it thrive. So I'd like to hear a statement on why we haven't achieved those and what plans are afoot to try and improve it in the future, please.
Mark, Shirley, do you want to open up, and I'll come in on the back of you if that's okay?
Thanks, Chair. In terms of housing generally, so the total number of units coming forward, it's worth bearing in mind that the period we're looking at is the tail end of things coming out of the previous UDP. The completions from the local development plan wouldn't have kicked in yet, but there has been a time lag in those sites coming forward, and that's reflected in our current 5-year housing land supply, which we've just had the inspector's decision on. We've got a 4.1-year supply. So that'll be picked up in a future report to this committee in round about September under the context of the annual monitoring report for the LDP. There's various reasons for those sites not coming forward more quickly, and part of it, including part of why these sites or the number of completions in this report are low, relates to the external economy, housing completions, the tail end of the recession and all those kind of factors. In terms of the target itself, which looks at the number of affordable units, again, that's partly a feature of the economy and the viability of schemes, which is a continuing challenge that we need to keep looking into. But it is a legitimate thing for us to discuss at Planning Committee and to negotiate over in order for sites to come forwards. There's a bit of context in the report, setting out a bit more detail on those figures, and then we've got some more information to give an idea about approvals and more recent completions. So in particular, looking at the larger sites of 10 units or more that have been approved, 5 units or more that have been approved in 15-16. And this is approvals rather than completions. So it's a different data set to the ones in the report. But we're looking at 150 affordable units approved out of 465. So that percentage has shot up quite reasonably. According to this, it's 32% of what's been approved in that last financial year is affordable. So things are looking up on those larger schemes, but there are some sort of external economic factors that are challenging what comes forward. And if a scheme isn't viable, it won't get built. So we can hold out for 35%, but we'll get 35% of nothing.
Sean, are you happy with that? I know Kelly wanted to come
Yeah,
in
it's
as well.
just a comment, really. I'm interested in your comments. There's in the Planning Act 2015, I think it is, there's a new emphasis on place plans, which town and community councils will be closely involved with, where they will compile a local plan, if you like, which must be sympathetic to the LDP, and we're just about to embark on a new LDP process. So do you think that will have much effect? I mean, will that be restricting? Because I think everybody wants to protect their own patch sometimes, rightly or wrongly. And I think that might have a major impact on our ability to get these figures in the future. Just interested on your comment.
Thanks, Chair. It shouldn't have an impact because a place plan has to reflect the LDP. So we couldn't have a housing site allocated in the LDP and then a place plan undo that, which is a different scenario to in England, where community plans are basically instead of LDPs, where an LDP doesn't exist. So that has happened in England, but it shouldn't happen here because of the way it sits in the hierarchy. But I guess time will tell.
Kelly?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just to really reflect on some of the remarks that Mark has already made and to put them in context, because I think is exactly the right question to ask. And because the majority of affordable housing is delivered on the coattails of market housing, as Mark has said, 35% of zero is zero. There's very little that we can do about that. And it's not just some of the external economic factors that are impacting our ability to take forward sites and to build them out. There are some policy drivers as well. So, for example, lots of our sites are in the south of the county. We're possibly going to have an M4 relief road blasted through or nearby some of those sites. So sometimes we're holding off till we see how some of these things have to play out, and that will have an implication, I think, in terms of future site allocation. I think something that we've been talking about through Future Monmouthshire as well is really interesting to bring to bear in this context. And that's over the next 25, 30 years, we're going to see a rapid increase in terms of our ageing population, not just those who are aged over 65, but those who are aged over 85. Now, that is going to have serious implications for the kind of housing market that we will have in the county. And simultaneously, our population of young people is declining. Not to the same extent, but we're seeing that taper off. So we've got to start to think, in the context of what Mark has said, we must have a 5-year housing land supply as a local authority. We have to be able to demonstrate that, because if we don't, and we don't at the moment, we were told this morning we've got 4.1-year housing land supply. That opens us up to planning by appeal, developers bringing forward sites that are not allocated in our plan. So we're going to have to start thinking, come September, do we set about reviewing our existing LDP? Because if we don't, we can't be sure that we've got the sites coming through that we can deliver proportions of affordable housing on. So as officers, I think we're trying to do everything we can at the moment to put the wheels in motion to make sure that we deliver affordable housing. Because if we don't, you're absolutely right, we won't have the economy we all want to achieve, because we won't have young people, we won't have new business starts, we won't have high growth businesses, we won't be able to create the conditions in which wealth is really made and created.
Can I thank you for that answer, because that was very relevant, and it gives me confidence that you're on the temperature of what's going on. Because yes, the demographics and the elderly population are going to increase, and so thank you for that comment.
Yeah, and as Mark has mentioned, in our September meeting, we'll be bringing forward the annual monitoring report, and there's an opportunity for us to explore this in more detail, particularly perhaps unintended consequence of what no doubt are laudable policies, but might not necessarily be proving to benefit our communities. And can I just follow up before I go to Councillor Watts, just in terms of, you mentioned the external economy, and I know Kelly mentioned that's not the sole issue, but in terms of our local, neighbouring local authorities, are they in a similar position to us, or are we, you know, behind the game, if you like, on this, in this area that John's highlighted?
It's very much a similar position, Chair. It's this time of year that we start getting the final decisions on our 2016 baseline, April 2016 baseline housing land supply. But those who have got an answer already, almost everybody is below 5 years. The one local exception is Newport, who is around about 6.3 years, and they've really done well in recent years with a bit of a growth strategy and lots of sites coming forward. But some of those were kind of slow burners coming through from a previous plan, and it's really picked up. And arguably, Newport's also benefited from the housing shortfall in Cardiff and their delayed LDP. So developers have gone to Newport as a close neighbour and a housing market alternative. So how that pans out as Cardiff sites come forward remains to be seen. But even Cardiff, with its very, very new LDP, is below a 5-year housing land supply. And it's partly the way it's calculated, which we're all currently disputing with the Welsh Government and saying it's not really reflecting the planning side. So they're carrying out some research at the moment, which we can report back to this committee again, as and when the results happen. They're doing an all Wales look at the viability of sites, why they're coming forward, why they're not, and how the whole policy situation's arranged. But certainly for the foreseeable future, we are where we are with this, and you know there is a clear need for more housing. So we need to grasp it by the horns really and look at how we address it in the next LDP.
Thank you for that answer, and as I mentioned, we'll be coming forward in September. I think I've got Councillor Watts then, Councillor Wintle. Yeah, well, if this is on the same topic, we'll go Councillor Watts.
I guess, you know, I'm interested in two things. There's a specific site in Chepstow by the old Fairfield Maybe site that was obviously earmarked, and I know it's probably, you know, I know it's probably going to be the bane of your life in the foreseeable future because of the logistics of getting people out. That was earmarked, that was a brownfield site. What impact, I guess my question is, what impact by not, I guess, going forward with that site will that have on you? What are the alternatives? And I guess the broader issue then of affordable housing, because we all know, as you rightly say, and it's really interesting what you said, all the stats and economic aspects of it, social economic stuff, is absolutely true, especially the points about Newport. Look at the swathes of land they've got earmarked by the old Lamworn Steelworks. You can see they're just about ready to accommodate the entire world there. I guess my concern is that with the impact of the Severn Bridge toll going down, that's going to further push up property prices in the south. And that makes it obviously less affordable for our younger people. You talked about the demographics, and I was looking at a stat the other day about deprivation in old people as well, and that's a worrying sign. So, okay, the 75s seem to be doing okay, and I was looking at pension provision, but if you go to the 85s, the level of increasing deprivation that hits on them is stark. So we have to have some kind of vision for that as well. It's interesting you talk about the future plan and all that, but that's a really dark realisation as well this county has to accommodate for. I wanted to know what we could do as far as legislation is concerned, as far as building social housing ourselves. Now, I don't want you all think I'm off on some kind of socialist utopia idea again, but effectively I think there is a consensus amongst all the political parties about, you know, what's happened. We all understand how the market's gone. We all understand the mistakes. No, I don't think anybody politically wants to repeat them, and no one quite knows how to address them, or maybe there isn't enough will to address them. What can we do as a local authority to push forward? Has anything changed as far as our capacity to invest and build our own social housing? You know, because I really can't think of an example in the UK where we've seen significant change, even though I understand that some of the legislation, and Kelly was the expert on this, is kind of been changed a little bit to allow local authorities to invest.
Yeah, Chair, if I cover the bit on Fairfield maybe and a general bit about RSLs and what's happening, then if Kel picks up on the council's tools and powers. In terms of Fairfield maybe, I'm confident the site will come forward. It's allocated in the LDP, so the principle's accepted. We're working closely with the applicants, and I certainly foresee it coming before committee, planning committee this side of Christmas. We did have a hold up for 18 months while the Welsh Government had a holding objection. They were looking at the air quality issues and traffic capacity, but that study's been completed, and options put forward of how that can be dealt with, which are far less drastic than we initially imagined. But that site itself, this is where we have a policy compromise, if you like. We want sustainable brownfield sites. You know, this one's right next to the railway station, in walking distance to Chepstow Town Centre. So in sustainability points, you know, ticks a lot of boxes. But as a brownfield site, also has a lot of costs. So no doubt there will be debates about viability and affordable housing. So there is that policy compromise to be made, and we need to be conscious of that when we're allocating sites in the LDP. In terms of affordable housing and other things that can take place, I think the RSLs, the Registered Social Landlords, are people like Mellin and Pobble and MHA are seeing a change in the way they're operating. Certainly for MHA, when they took on our housing stock, there was a period, I think, of 5 years when they couldn't do any building themselves. But I think that's now passed. And the other RSLs are looking not just at taking on affordable housing on other people's sites, but doing their own. So we've recently given consent to Mellin on the Coedglas site, which is 58 units, but they'll be doing a mix, building it themselves, but doing a mix of markets and affordable housing. So they're coming forward with different solutions themselves. There's a pretty innovative project in Newport that Pobble is delivering, the Loftus Garden Village, that some members came on a visit of recently, and other ways of doing those projects. So they're looking at things themselves and working with us in terms of housing and planning, at different ways of delivering. In terms of council itself, if I pass over to Cal.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, I think it's a really, really interesting point, because I think probably to date, I think we've seen our local development plan as a land use tool. It's not. It should be a place shaping tool. You know, it's got to be about creating the kinds of communities we need as a county to thrive in the future. So if we can't create accommodation, employment, economic opportunities for our young people, and to have that thriving economy we all want to see, then, you know, what do we have if we can't build from that base level? I think we are seeing some local innovation. As Mark has said, you know, we've got some great opportunities to think differently, not just about the housing sites that we've got allocated in the existing LDP, but what we do with some of our own land in the future as a council as well. And yes, okay, we've transferred our stock. You know, we transferred our stock and created Monmouthshire Housing Association some time ago. And we did that because we didn't want to be involved in the direct business of building and running housing. There was a much more efficient and effective way to do that through creation of a new party. But, you know, in England, you know, we've seen councils, we've seen a resurgence of councils involved in building projects, if not involved in building council housing directly, in creating the conditions for us to accelerate affordable housing provision. So one of the things that Deb Hill-Howells is looking at the moment is on the sites that we've allocated, council-owned sites, what can we do that's different? Do we just want to sell these sites off to the market and get a capital receipt in and get the standard percentage of affordable housing? Or do we want to work differently and look at things like asset-backed vehicles? So we're actually going for higher proportions of affordable housing. Or we're looking at things like flexible tenure. You know, how do you enable people to staircase up and down according to their affordability levels? So they're not just stuck in social housing and then the only place they can go is to buy their own. There's kind of a gradient that they could possibly step up to. Mark has mentioned Loftus Garden Village in Newport, which is like a cooperative. You know, could we see the return of cooperative housing? Is that something we would like to see a feature of Monmouthshire communities in the future? So I think there's lots and lots of different options open to us. And under the future Monmouthshire work, which I'm heading up now, what we're trying to do at the moment is some scenario planning. So if in 15 years' time we're going to see a drop in our young people and growth in our older population, do we as a county just want to accept that and say, that's okay, we'll just build bungalows in the future because we're just going to be accommodating an ageing population? Or do we start now putting in place the policy tools and levers to say, actually, we're not going to accept a decline in the number of young people. We're actually going to create the conditions, whether it's the job opportunities, the business, the enterprise opportunities, and the housing opportunities, to start making sure that we hang on to them, we retain them, and actually we start attracting young people here because we're creating the kind of environment. So things like asset-backed vehicles, thinking about our new LDP possibly, if we go down that route as more of a place-shaping tool, if we can think about how we work more innovatively to make our own land available for these purposes, then I think we could have that mixed economy that you speak about in terms of housing provision.
Councillor Watts, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I guess my concern is, I mean, specifically going back to that site, and you might expect me to say this, is that there's a concentration of interest in that particular area. So just marginally over the border in England, you know, you've got potentially huge development that the local authority, they're terrified of really getting in the developer's way for fear that they're going to have endless legal problems which cost the taxpayer a huge amount of money. But my calculation, and it's a rough calculation, I sat with the planning, the chair of planning at Chepstow Town Council, was that within half a mile you're going to have approximately 700 houses, 800 houses, and I worry about the infrastructure, the impact that has on the infrastructure. And I won't go into a debate about that or the argument. We can have this forever and a day, but we're going to I think we're going to have to look broader than that. We're going to have to look at other sites. We're going to have to be a little bit more creative if that's possible. I'm sure you'll say that, you know, we've done everything we possibly can. But it's noticeable as well that the little villages, the little towns and hamlets that we have really not been impacted on or taken up any kind of social housing that is notable. And I understand the politics of that. It's the same across the country. It's, you know, if you go to Wiltshire or Somerset, it's exactly the same because, you know, those people, some of them, are fearful then that you're going to obviously have the local hamlets character changed. I guess that's probably the nicest way I could put it. But I think that, if, you know, we need to do something now. We need to be really on top of this now, because if we don't, you know, people are going to be literally dropping off the edge on this issue. They already are, I guess, in some places. My final question is there anything that we can do to go back to what would we, I guess, traditionally call council housing? What are the roadblocks in stop us investing as a local authority in building affordable social housing, whatever tag you want to put on it, for our younger people?
There is nothing legally stopping us doing it. And as I say, you know, some councils in Wales have retained their housing stock, so the Vale of Glamorgan and Caerphilly, they've obviously got to meet Welsh housing quality standards, but beyond that, they can build. But I suppose the question is, who is best placed to do that? We know that housing associations can probably do it cheaper, more effective. They've got economies of scale. They've got framework contracts with builders. They've got their own house building arms. You know, is that the market we want to be in, or should our job be to work with them to create the conditions so we can both benefit? So, for example, things that we've done in the past, and Shirley knows this better than anyone, things like resale covenant schemes, where if you're creating affordable housing on an equity share basis, we do it in partnership with housing associations. But as I say, there's that resale covenant. Every time that property's sold, you reinvest it in creating another affordable property. So I think there are ways and means that we can achieve the same benefit and same effect. I suppose the question needs to be, do we need to be doing that, or should we be doing it in partnership with the experts?
Thank you. Councillor Wintle, then Councillor Dovey, and then Councillor
Thank you,
Foster.
Chair. I totally agree with what Kelly just said, because another reason why the housing associations are more able to, or better placed to build houses, is they can borrow the money. The council is unable to borrow that, the sort of money that is required for the social housing, which is why when I was a cabinet member, I was the one who transferred the house over, because there was no way that Mumshire would have achieved the Welsh housing standard on the sort of money that we were able to use and what we could borrow outside. So that was the main reason for Cross and Monmouthshire Housing achieved the Welsh Housing Standard early. The other problem we've got is our youngsters have already gone. They've had to move out to Torfaen, Caerphilly and Blaenau Gwent because the cost of housing is out of their reach and the sort of wages they're on in Monmouthshire. And unless we can get industry into Monmouthshire and to get the economy up, there's no way they're going to come back in. You take a place like Monmouth, for example, the cost of housing there is getting on near to London prices. So even the housing associations can't afford to build there. And not only that, I can't understand where we're going with this, where the larger sites are not coming forward with the low-cost housing. Mark will tell you that they will go to appeal. But when the Welsh Government sets our standard and level of percentage for low-cost housing, if they don't back us on that, well, you've had it. So I think what the planning department should be doing is go into the Welsh Assembly and ask them what their game is, basically. You've also got, we've got a lot of villages where development could take place. But the reason it doesn't take place is because there's too many NIMBYs. These people have come in from outside and they want to keep it exactly the same as when they bought. Now, until that's overturned, I think we're going to have, and not only that, we're building on sites we should not be building on because of, in Monmouth, it's the flooding. You're between three rivers, and it's bottom of the hills, basically. So why build? Only because some clown wrote in the papers that it's a good place to live. So you've got developers hovering like vultures around there, and they were plant houses in the mud. There's two sites. There's one current now. I've had many words with Mark about it. Is Wonastow Road, but the one before that, which is Plaskin Glyndor or something they call it, that was a bigger bog. And houses, well, the houses are getting damp with water's capillary action coming up through from the water table. It's on the bed of an old lake. So, if we're going to persist in building a place like that, these sites are going to take a long time to come to fruition. So that's where you're going to get a backlog of housing. But anyway, I think I've said enough.
Okay, and there's some really useful discussion points coming out here, and I'm not looking to curtail discussions, but in terms of taking this forward, just to note again that we've got the Scrutiny Committee meeting in September where we can look at this in greater detail under the annual monitoring report. Plus, it might be worthwhile doing a members' seminar again on this issue because there's a lot of feeling around the room here, and I'm sure it'll be across all council members who'd like to maybe have an update. But Kelly, I know you want to respond to Alan anyway.
Just very quickly, thank you, Jay. Just to say that when we talk about the city deal later on, I think it picks up on Councillor Watts' points as well about allocating housing, not in isolation, but making sure the appropriate infrastructure is there, the appropriate connectivity, the knowledge capability, all of the things that you need to make housing sustainable. And I think one of the things that I'm really looking forward to hearing the debate on in September is, as a county, how are we going to make sure we balance the need to protect and preserve our beautiful countryside, our natural environment, our tourism industry, with a clear need to have growth and housing provision for future generations. So I know it's always a tension, but it's clearly one of the things that we have to grapple with.
And as you mentioned, we've got City Deal coming up as the final agenda item, so there'll be some opportunities to discuss that further around the sort of spatial planning element. Is that okay, Councillor Wintle? So I'll move on to Councillor Dovey. Councillor Dovey?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think I agree with just about everything most people have said at the moment. the big problem it isn't just about building houses. It is also attracting business, people to the county. So people who want to live in the county can afford to buy houses within the county. If we don't do that, if we don't get businesses in here, we'll end up being a dormitory town to Bristol and that area, South Gloucestershire, well, basically right the way up to Gloucester itself, because that is developing as an area. There's a big price differential between Monmouth and Bristol, and that's why people choose to come across here. I've been across to Bristol and had a look at how they are looking at transport and residential housing and all the things that go with supporting the economy of Bristol and South Gloucestershire. And they take our area of Chepstow into their area of where there is potential housing. They also take Lydney as well, of course. But once you cross the bridge to them, it is just all about the Severn side, if you like. The only other thing I wanted to say about new ways of looking at housing, I did attend a presentation here, and I can't remember now the name of the estate, probably, or potential estate. Probably it will come to you, Kelly. But it was with Mellin Homes, and how Mellin provided a whole package, if you like, from design to building the houses themselves. And there were also social elements of that development they were going to take on board as well. Now that does seem to be, I haven't heard how far it's gone, but perhaps you can enlighten us about that. But that did seem to me to be a really good and refreshing model. And as Alan has said, it does seem that the housing associations are in a better position to borrow funds to do that work. Final point is, if we don't get our housing stock right in the places that we've identified at the moment, it will have a pressure on other areas of the county. I can see, for instance, if we didn't, in Chepstow, if we didn't get the Fairfield site up and running and what is already in our LDB, then we would be forced to consider building houses on by the side of the Link Road and St. Lawrence Road, which is an important part of the entry to the Wye Valley, etc. We did try to get Greenbelt status for that, but the Welsh government wouldn't let us have it, and I presume the reason for that was that they saw it as a potential site for housing if necessary.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thanks, Councillor Dovey. I know Mark wants to come in and respond. I'm going to, if that's okay, that's going to be the last question now on that specific performance indicator, because we've got a huge document and we've only covered housing now in the last 45 minutes. So it shows the strength of feeling, which is great, and we'll have a members' seminar and bring this back in September. But I'll ask Mark to come back to you now, Councillor Dovey, if that's okay on your questions.
Sorry, Chair, I'll be really brief. I was just going to say I'm really encouraged by the discussion because there is so much opportunity when we do come to LDP review to tackle these issues. Looking at different options, at the moment the focus is on the 3 main settlements, but we can look at different and innovative options and put those out to consultation. For example, something as bold as a new settlement, or looking at expanding our more rural areas in sensitive ways, or even in more significant ways to such a size that they have the amenities and become sustainable. So there's all kinds of options we can look at. And again, in terms of employment lands, that's something that gets picked up in the annual monitoring report, which will come back to this committee in September. But that is something we look at closely. We have the sites out there, and we've had a series of meetings recently, including with Kath and her colleagues, looking at our sites, and are they coming forward? If not, why not? Are not in the right places? Are we not really targeting the types of industry that are growing? So those conversations are all happening, and we can get into far more detail on that with the AMR in due course. One final mention though, in terms of something we are doing in terms of affordable housing that is working and is unique in Wales, and that's Monmouthshire's policy on these 60-40 sites. So on some of our villages, the sites where we want the affordable housing, but to deliver that we're allowing 40% market housing. That's completely unique in Wales and really innovative, and it's working. The sites are coming forward. So there's some of those tools again that we can look at developing as and when we review the LDP.
Councillor Dovey, is that okay? Because I think, as we said, we've got to... Okay. Brilliant. Yeah, I think what today has shown is there's been some really worthwhile contributions, and there's a lot of feeling around this issue. So I think we need to look and focus it in specific detail, and we're going to do that. So that's an action to come out of today, which is great. Members, I think Councillor Prosser wanted to look at another area. Did you indicate to speak, Councillor Prosser?
Yes, thank you, Chair. A quick question, quick answer, really. On page 11 or page 17 or page 23, because they've got 3 numbers on my page here, depending on which one you're looking at, it's RDP. I'd like a comment on how long are the RDP funds secured for because of Brexit, etc. I'm very conscious of implications and whether we would secure funding in the future from the UK government to replace. So as it stands now, how long is our RDP programme guaranteed for before we have to start looking?
Hi. Our RDP funding currently runs through to 2017 with what we call M+2. So what usually happens with European funding, it takes a couple of years for them to come to fruition. So that would take us through to 2019-20. We've been told that anything that's been approved, which is clearly all the RDP programme, will continue. And as far as we're also aware through discussion documents we've had from WLGA, is that Welsh Government are now pushing for confirmation from UK Government that UK Government funds will come to us to replace that, but we will wait and see. But clearly, my direction to the team is basically spend, and let's get the money out the door as soon as possible, really. Yeah.
At the risk of overloading with member seminars, at some point I think we're going to have a member seminar on outcomes post-referendum. And I think, particularly our committee, given a lot of the work that our officers do relies upon European funding, it'd be critical that we're all involved in that. So another action to put on there. I've got a couple of questions, if I may, and they go back to, firstly, page 5, which is around superfast broadband again, and probably things I've reiterated before, but the first is around AB Internet, and whether or not where AB Internet is going into certain areas, does that then preclude that area from being accessible to the BT rollout of superfast broadband? And what percentage are we at now of premises with access to superfast broadband?
The answer is no, but clearly there's going to be a delay in some of those areas because they were in the white postcode areas, which are those areas that basically have been determined as hard to reach. So clearly they're looking at fibre to the premises rather than fibre to the cabinet, therefore it takes longer because you're literally going from premise to premise. I was at a Superfast Champions meeting earlier this week. We haven't had data from BT since December of last year. And I raised that as an issue with them. They are very aware now, Welsh Government, of the issues that we've got. What has actually happened is the marketing team in BT has now finished their contract up to the end of June. Therefore, Welsh Government are now picking up the marketing, which will be consumer focused on encouraging take-up. I expressed concerns that from our perspective, we were still nowhere near completion in terms of rollout. Other areas at 95%, for example, Blaen y Gwent was mentioned. So clearly we need that information to be updated, very regularly. We are dealing with inquiries, as you and I know, on a one-to-one basis. I have asked for us to be given a contact directly into Welsh Government and into the Superfast team so that we are able to get that information quickly, which is what we were able to do when the marketing department, and we had a direct marketing contact, as you know. So they're in that transition. Similar problem we've got with Business Wales when they change contracts as well. It's very difficult for us to get the data at the moment, but we are constantly asking for it.
Yeah, and I know you've done great work with working with BT when they were able to provide that information. That's really quite concerning now that, you know, we're quite far behind. We were promised at the last time BT came to meet us that we would have early 2017 the full rollout programme covered in Monmouthshire. I can't see that being anywhere near being completion. So can we put a request on Welsh Government to come and attend this committee, whoever the contact would be now, if that's in agreement with members? I just feel like we followed it with BT. If it's now a member of Welsh Government who's dealing with this, we need to be pushing them here to be scrutinising. Councillor Watts, did you want to come in on that
only
issue
that. So
specifically?
I should make you aware that just prior to the Welsh Assembly elections, a leaflet went round telling everybody about the rollout. So I kind of question that, because occasionally I get different phone calls. To be fair, I had one from David's ward probably about 3 months ago, and he asked me, you know, what's happening about it. He worked for a IT company, and he liked to homework. So he'd moved specifically into the area under the impression that was simply going to happen, so he could work, him and his wife. We're now thinking of moving again closer to Bristol, because that was part of, you know, that was a necessity really. But you know, what you've also got on the Bristol side is this kind of huge advancement in the tech industry. It's rapidly growing. And, you know, I know I've bored this committee before about the stats about Bristol having the highest concentration of private sector jobs outside of London. And so the financial sector is kind of like stable, but, you know, the tech sector is really growing. And, you know, if we really want to be part of, you know, the seven-side tech revolution, if there is such a thing, then we really need to get on top of it. It is a nonsense for the Assembly or the agencies that are working for them to tell the public and local businesses that they already have super fast broadband, and if they've got you know, any issues with it, just kind of you know, email them their postcode. It's a lie, yeah, and they are just not facing up to it. No business in Chepstow's got super fast broadband either side of the bridge. None of the developments that have kind of been built in the last 15 years have got super fast broadband. And of course we were told as well that the Fairfield Maybe site, which wasn't even going to get it because it wasn't big enough. You know, I mean, we really need to kind of get them in here and rough them up a bit.
Yep, I've got down on the actions now, and you know, if you look through some of the statistics here, it's actually good news in terms of the number of people who live and work in Monmouthshire, so we're seeing an increase in that proportion. We want to sustain and increase the number of people living and working and staying in Monmouthshire. We need to have a fantastic broadband provision. At the moment, we're way behind our neighbouring authorities.
Yeah, Chair, I didn't mean, you know, physically rough them up a bit.
Why not? Why not?
Okay, that's good to know. I had one further question, if that's okay, and possibly for Kelly. It was more around whether we think that our targets or our measurement indicators are the right ones in terms of actually addressing the SIP. So I know it's around rural accessibility to rural services, for example. Do you think the actual figures that we're using tells us enough about the story behind that and whether we're actually improving support, particularly for those in isolated communities? Because whilst the target figures might be good, it doesn't actually maybe tell the real picture in terms of some of the wider landscape of Monmouthshire.
Yeah, I think it's a good and it's a very fair point. And I think you're right, the performance indicators will only ever tell us part of the picture. But Kath and the team at the moment have commissioned through the RDP an assessment of rural services needs. That's a very comprehensive assessment. We're trying to look at demographic change, future projections, you know, not just things as they are now. We're trying to look ahead and project forward as well. So I think when we have that information, and I'm not quite sure about the timing of that now, Kath, I know it was going to coincide with the population and wellbeing assessments that we're undertaking over the summer. Once we have that, I think we'll be able to fashion much more pertinent and relevant targets to be working on. But we need the evidence first.
And I think as a committee we'd welcome the review and the response from that study. Councillor Wintle, then Councillor Dovey.
Thank you, Chair. Basically a question for Kelly, I think. It says the percentage of municipal waste that's prepared for reuse or recycled has gone down, declined and missed targets. At one stage, we were second in Wales with our recycling and things. What's gone wrong, please?
I don't think anything has gone wrong or such. I mean, Roger will be able to put you in the picture to a much better extent. Here he is now. But I think because of some of the changes that we've seen, and obviously we've altered some of the arrangements with the bags now. Obviously we haven't provided the bags, but I think possibly we may go back to doing that. I think that's why we've seen a slight dip. I know talking to Rachel, it's nothing that we're really concerned about. And I think obviously the Strong Communities Select Committee have been presiding over the next phase in terms of the evolution of the waste service. And that is all being done with making sure that we stay on top of the targets, and if at all possible, we improve upon them year on year.
Can I have... So it wouldn't be anything to do with the fact that you're getting, on occasion, 3 lorries following each other around sites, around the states, and also the routes are changed. People don't know what the hell's going on. That's the impression people are coming to me on. So, you know, that could be a major factor.
Yeah, I think this is performance indicators on Strong Communities Committee next week. So this will be on the Strong Communities Select agenda next week. So I don't want to go into too much detail here today, but we will, of course, respond to you, Councillor Wintle.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. I missed the first question. I suspect it's in relation to recycling performance,
Yes,
is it?
yes.
Yeah, there's a drop in this year because there's a specific issue in relation to the disposal of glass. Our disposal company or our recycling company was using glass as an aggregate, good word, aggregate. And they were using it to create roads within their work site. And that was not allowed to be counted as recycling. So we've taken a dip in this year. There's been an increase in residual waste as well. And we've also this year dipped in our performance against other local authorities. I think we're down, provisional reports are we're down to 5th from 2nd. But that is because at this moment in time we're not recycling the bottom ash from the Trident Park in Cardiff. As and when that is recycled, then our performance should come back up. So we'll be back up close to the top is our anticipation. In relation to vehicles following vehicles, if it's particularly a Monmouth issue, then I'm quite happy to discuss that with the member. We haven't changed any services in particular in that area. So I'd need to know the details surrounding that one, albeit we are putting in a new pilot service, a new trial later in the year, but that's more in the Abergavenny area.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Roger. Councillor Dovey?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If I could go back to page 1, and it's the item on the whole place plan for Lower Wide says it's on target. Work is being undertaken to understand business priorities, key community priorities, etc., etc. Could Kelly fill me in, please, on who and what is, who and when this work has been done, and with whom? For instance, I'm on the marketing committee and the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm not aware of anybody speaking to them with regard to priorities, and I would have thought that was a good start. I mean, this work isn't visible to me as a councillor, and I think other councillors are the same. So could you bring us up to date? Otherwise, that doesn't mean
I'll have to speak to Deborah Howells now because of the recent restructure and the changes. Whole place doesn't come under my section anymore, Councillor Dovey. So if you let me go off and have a chat with Deb this morning, I'll drop you a line this afternoon with a full update, and I'll make sure that I list the different organisations and agencies that have been consulted with, and I'll make sure somebody comes back to you in terms of future plans.
Okay, thank you. Can we make a contribution then when that comes out? Could we, could you say something like we would welcome contributions from the local community, business community. Thank you.
Councillor Windhall?
Yes, on the whole place thing, I know there was a pilot in the south of the county. When is it going to be rolled out to the north, and especially sort of Monmouth sort of area, please?
Mark, I know you've had a meeting in Monmouth about whole place plans, haven't you? Do you want to provide a quick update on that, if that's okay?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We've had a meeting recently with a chap called David Farnsworth, who's working on behalf of the Town Council and stands, looking at doing a place plan in Monmouth and with a couple of colleagues from the Town Council. It's a really positive meeting, and we're now going to arrange another kind of multidiscipline officer meeting with them just to understand what data or sources of information we already have. So as an example, one of the areas was around tourism, and I pointed out that Nicola's here. We've got loads of tourism data. Let's get her around the table and other colleagues and discuss all of this. So they're heading in that direction. And I've also had a very initial discussion with Will McLean in terms of how does this link in with the whole place. Should they dovetail? And we're doing some work around that. We just had somebody do some research looking at how we can dovetail these things a bit more effectively. So can part of the whole place project become a place plan in the planning legislation context, as well as doing the other things that whole place seeks to achieve. So in terms of Monmouth, that works kind of been started by the Town Council, and we're trying to link in with them and get it all dovetailed together and make sure we're not duplicating effort as well.
Can I come? So when is the members of us council members going to be involved in it or informed about what's happening? Because I'm getting emails from various people and I haven't got a clue what the hell they're talking about. It would be nice.
Okay, I think when I go back now and I speak to Will, this comes under Will's levels of responsibility now. So I'll get a full update on whole place, which I'll send to the chair to go out to all members of the committee, so you know what's happening in each of your areas and what you can expect in terms of next steps.
Councillor Prosser?
Yeah, just for information really, Abergavenny Town Council have embarked on their own place plan using volunteers, and there's a group of councillors there who are putting that plan together. And also, I'm a chair of a local plan, a European project, Agri-Urban project, and that is to produce a plan for Abergavenny and surrounds, about 10 miles around, to maintain sustainability. And that will be one arm of a whole place plan, I would suggest. And so we just need to be aware of these other activities.
Okay, members, are there any further questions? Otherwise, we'll move on. And yeah, so I'll just, summary, we've spoken a lot about affordable housing planning. We've touched on whole place planning. We've even covered onto the recycling agenda and discussed broadband. But in terms of the specific actions, we'll receive an update on whole place planning across the county, and that will go out to all members of this committee. We will request that Welsh Government are brought to this meeting on the broadband scrutiny issue and in terms of rollout of Superfast Cymru. We will ask for a planning seminar around LDP, as well as bringing the item forward on the annual monitoring report at the next committee meeting in September. And there are suggestions, which I'm sure will be forthcoming anyway, in terms of a post-referendum outcomes seminar for us to have a discussion around particularly the impact of European funded projects. I think I've covered everything in terms of the actions, but are members happy with that and happy to move on to the next agenda item? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much to the officers that have been in attendance to that item, and let's move on to the next agenda item. So as members know, and many were involved, we had a business breakfast meeting back in May. We've since discussed some of the outcomes from that breakfast event with Kath and members of her team. Today it's to look specifically at some of the outcomes, specifically 5, 6, 10, 8 and 12. And those are relating to tourism and brown signage and advertising and marketing. And Fiona, who attended our business breakfast, has very kindly come along today and given up her time just to come and outline some of the issues that she raised. And we really value you joining us today and attending the business breakfast. It's really helpful to have that input and experience as part of our discussions. And we're keen to have a two-way process today where we can look at some of the issues and see where we can move forward. We've got a number of officers present who will be able to help and support this agenda item and some of the things that we're looking at. Fiona, shall I hand over to you, and maybe you could just introduce some of the issues that you raised with us at the business breakfast, if you're happy to do that, and then we'll see what officers have to say in response.
So thank you and good morning, everybody. First of all, and not on my list, in fact, but very glad to hear earlier that you're talking so forcefully about the need for superfast broadband. In tourism, most of our businesses now rely on digital marketing, and some of them are terribly badly constrained by lack of broadband. There are some places that still don't have any broadband at all. They have no Wi-Fi facilities whatsoever, let alone superfast. In my own village, we've had quite a row, really, with the BT area, because our own business and many other home workers have been constrained by that. We did actually go out in the road and attract the men who were doing the digging and ask them what they were doing and why. And they came up with a lot of rubbish, really, which we did refer to our elected member, and she thankfully sorted it out. But it does mean there's disconnect here, there and everywhere. So the more you can do, speaking from the private sector, I would be more inclined to rough them up than you might. But I think some action needs to be taken, really. It is a serious matter. We joke about it a little bit, but it is very serious to small businesses. Anyway, that was one issue. Are we going to take these points in order from the agenda numbers, or how would you like to do this?
Yes, we can do it, but in terms of the outcomes.
Yes.
If you want to do it that way, that would be...
Yeah, well, it's a sort of easy way of doing it. In terms of business engagement, that's why I'm here. We are an association of, depending how you count us, between 300 and 400 members. I say it like that because you could count the number of businesses, or you could count the number of individuals who are a member of our association. So some people have more than one business, and that's why we could be between 300 and 400 collectively. For those of you that don't know us, we are quite complicated in that we work cross-border. We have members here in Monmouthshire, we have members in Herefordshire, and we have members in the Forest of Dean. And the clue's in the name, really. Despite the fact that the name is Wye Valley and Forest of Dean, we actually do go further into Monmouthshire than that. We come almost as far as Abergavenny, and then our partner organisation, or our colleagues really, from Abergavenny into the Brecon Beacons, Brecon Beacon Tourism, do a similar sort of job. So I think much of what I would say would be applicable to them as well for that side of the county. So business engagement, we are very keen to engage with you. That's why I'm here. We know that it's very necessary these days for the private sector to do a lot of what the public sector used to be able to do and no longer can. And we have had to take on roles which we never expected to do. So in the last 3-4 years, there's been massive changes in our organisation. In particular, we've had to make those changes to the way we work in the Forest of Dean, which no longer has a public sector tourism function. I'm saying that because I know that some of you in the room are aware of this already, but others may not be, so perhaps repeating myself. The Forest of Dean no longer has a Nicola or her department. It no longer has TICs, and the elected members there felt the loss. They needed to do something, but they couldn't afford to do it anymore. And the result of that is that they have outsourced a lot of their erstwhile work to us. They give us a budget of $28,000 a year. It was originally on a 3-year service level agreement, but the members have been very happy with what's happening, and it looks as if that will be renewed and be ongoing. And for that, we are producing broadly their marketing, PR and social media function. We can't do everything they used to do by any means, and we don't try to, but we do that, which means that we run what used to be the Forest of Dean Tourism's website. We produce what used to be the Forest of Dean Tourism's leaflets, and we do what used to be their social media. And we do it on contract to them, and obviously we report back for that money, which is why when you look at our material, there is quite a strong emphasis on the Forest of Dean. That doesn't mean we don't like Monmouthshire or we don't like South Herefordshire, but obviously he who pays the piper to a certain extent calls the tune. So we're doing that work for them. Having learned to do that rather well, and we had to learn rather fast, when I say we are an elected board of 12 members and 2 part-time paid staff. So we are talking about a lot of volunteer time here. We had to learn to do that as well as running our own businesses, and we think we're doing it quite effectively, and the Forest of Dean District Council agrees with that. So what we have now is a very effective website which covers those 3 counties. And one of the things, and it comes really in item 5 of your list, is that we would like to see a lot more coordination and collaboration with other people's digital platforms, specifically Monmouthshire's. We understand the need for you to have your own. However, there is an opportunity which is not really being maximised here for us to repeat, perhaps, a lot of the material which appears on your site. There is a lot of possibility of cross-promotion with social media, which is not being maximised. I think more bang for Monmouthshire's buck would come if we did a bit more of that. There will come a question of how much we can do for free and whether we would do it on a contract if there was lots of it. But we're open to discussion about how that would work, because we know we can do it. We've been doing it the other way, and it's working very well indeed. Excuse me, my voice is horrible today. So more coordination, more PR, more social media, cooperation, always good. And the more of it, the merrier, really. We would actually be willing to put more of Monmouthshire's name as opposed to the Wye Valley name on our website if that was to be agreed. There's not a blockage in that. We wouldn't be changing the name of the association, but we would be willing to change it a bit on the website if it was agreed. So I think there's room for discussion there, and that might suit both sides. Going back up to item 4, we do have a members-only website, which is resources for our businesses. It's quite separate from the customer one, and we could, in fact, put the Monmouthshire offer on there, because there are many members who exist as businesses, but maybe they don't know all the things you could offer, and obviously we get brand new businesses joining us. So if you can give us a digital document, it can go on there, I'm sure. Not a problem about that. Going on to item 6, a need to ensure coordination in terms of policy and strategic direction. That's to a certain extent internal to your organisation, but we also have a destination strategy as an association, and we do talk to Nicola's department about that, and there is a great deal of overlap. If there was more overlap, that would be good, but there is a great deal already. It's also in line with things from the Forest of Dean and things from South Herefordshire. I think you could probably best describe it as a collection of Venn diagrams, that everybody will have some things which they do on their own, but there is an awful lot which we can all do together. And when resources are as tight as they are now, and we're relying so very heavily on volunteer time, the more we do together, the better it's got to be for everybody. So can we have more talk about that? Brown signs, I don't even want to go there. I've sat through more brown sign meetings in my life than I ever want to go to. I'm sure you're all going to sink under the table when you get onto that. Business awareness, item 7. Some businesses are operating in geographic clusters. Well, we definitely are, and that is because that is the way that visitors view the area. Our visitors coming to the eastern side of the county and the Forest of Dean do not see the English-Welsh border. So we definitely operate in a geographical cluster. As I said earlier, we're happy to come further into the county, but we're not seeking to go over to the Beacons, which is a different geographical cluster and is well dealt with over that side. We try to overcome this issue of lack of communication between small businesses. We have meetings for members about every month. We had one yesterday. 60 businesses present at that, and that's pretty common. Food businesses can't join us if they're not up to the right number of star standards, just as a matter of interest because of this. And if somebody drops below, we kick them out. We actually do that. We suspend their membership until their hygiene rating goes back up again. So I would strongly suggest that that's something that's taken up elsewhere. Customers rely on it, and we're relying on a quality product. Source locally, we work on that as much as we can. Business rates, we all get stung by them. Tourist information centres is the one that exercises everybody. I don't know whether any of you are aware that, having just said that the Forest of Dean District Council closed its TICs, Colford Town Council felt the draft and has opened a TIC recently. We've been very supportive of that. We've given them a lot of assistance. They provide the premises and we've provided the know-how. I think is the way to do it. It's staffed by volunteers. It is an absolutely runaway success at the moment. It's new. Who knows how well it'll do in the long term. But right now, it's bringing life to Colford that they didn't have before. So anything you can do to keep TICs going in the county, it's a no-brainer as far as our association's concerned. Is that enough to be going on with, or do you need more to start with?
That's great.
Okay.
And before I go out to members for questions, I think it's probably beneficial that maybe Nicola comes in. Would that be right, Nicola? Just to give a bit of a response to that, but also just maybe a bit of a wider overview about some of the work we're doing, particularly in relation to some of those issues that are picked up, and also the brown signage issue as well, because I know that will come up at some point. And,
good luck on that one.
Yeah, we'll see how we proceed. But Nicola, if you want to take over, that'd be good.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Fiona. I think you're definitely pushing against an open door in terms of your enthusiasm to share content online and anywhere else, because that's obviously a win-win situation for everybody. There's really no issue with that at all. Especially anything that doesn't create any extra workload, because obviously we've got quite a limited capacity, but anything that we can do within our current capacity to help share any content that you've got on a reciprocal basis, you know, there really is no issue with that. In terms of content for the website, we have been sending our events information to John. So any information that we can share like that you would like for your website, that really isn't an issue. So very happy to support that in any way, in the same way that we would with the other tourism associations operating in the area. So obviously, you are one of three, with Abergavenny District Tourism Association, Brecon Beacons Tourism Association. So between the three of you, you represent about 10% of between the three of you represent 20% of the accommodation providers in Monmouthshire. So there are a lot of businesses that are not represented by any tourism association. And I suppose what we need to be very aware of is that we need to represent all of those tourism businesses, including those that are covered by the tourism associations. And in order to drive tourism, we will support that any digital or other types of marketing activity that we are able to. If we want to look at, was it business awareness? So how we usually communicate any opportunities, any marketing or other opportunities, any opportunities for support is via email, I suppose, to our database. So any business that has an entry on our website, so that can be a food business, an activity business, attractions or accommodation, those businesses would be on our database and we communicate those opportunities to them. And what we can do as well, and what we have done, is to communicate any opportunities that come via the tourism associations who want to communicate with that broader database. So, you know, I think there are definitely probably ways to work more closely together, and then there are opportunities that perhaps we're not capitalising on now, but we're certainly not starting from a low point. I think we're doing, you know, quite a lot together anyway, but I think, you know, those opportunities can be improved. You know, we've got a good enough relationship, Fiona, for you to know that if you have an idea, then we usually talk about it. And where we can help, then we certainly will. In areas where we can't help, it's usually because we've had funding from Welsh Government to do something with Welsh businesses only. And sometimes there are issues with projects not perhaps aligning on both sides of the border, or the same funding opportunity not being available. But where we can, I would say that we do. And I hope you would feel that.
And can I just ask, and we'll go to member questions now, in terms of ensuring, and you know, we're getting some great contributions from Fiona and her members, and in terms of the wider tourism community that we engage with, are we going to go out to consult with them, or have we got a plan coming up where we might be able to start to feed in from the wider community as well to take on board their responses?
Yes, we have recently secured funding from Welsh Government to review our destination plan, which formally ended in 2015, and to review the partnership arrangements that actually underpin that plan. So as part of that work, we will be consulting with all stakeholders, including obviously Wye Valley and Forest of Dean Tourism Association, which is a key one, but obviously all those other individual tourism businesses, all businesses, chambers of commerce, etc., all those organisations and individuals who make some sort of contribution to the visitor economy, which is broader than tourism itself.
Councillor Watts, did you want to come in?
Yeah, so first of all, you know, again, apologies for, you know, the non-attendance really at the business breakfast meeting. School run got in the way, so, and it's something I would have really liked to have come along to. I don't, I mean, I understand, I do understand the necessity of obviously collaboration. You'd expect me to say that, living right on the border myself, and you know, the interest that local people have in local tourism, really. You know, the if you like, the users of that, going up as a family to the Forest of Dean, or having a look at, say, the Puzzle Wood, for example. I know that's very popular because of the Star Wars thing that's happened there. And from a regional perspective, you can draw on that as well. I just think that I'm not entirely sure if the authority, my own local authority, is in the mindset really to engage. And I don't mean the officers. I know the officers are committed, but I mean, frankly, any local authority that closes its tourist information centre in a place that has a place like Chepstow has to be insane. It does. The footfall that we lose, the information that we lose, is really significant to the way that we operate in the future. The level of complaint that, for example, Chepstow Castle has had, which you know is run by CADU, from people who obviously naturally will go to the tourist information centre and then find themselves left really at the reception with somebody who's obviously used to selling tickets and may have a wide kind of local interest, but is not specifically, I guess, kind of clued up to enough to kind of give information about hotels and, you know, events that could stream people out to, say, the Forest of Dean, or down to, say, Cardiff, or so on and so forth. So I guess my worry is, until we can solve our own problems, really, I mean, you know, please come along and talk to us and tell us what you know and swap ideas and stuff. But I just think that we're in a place at the moment, and I'm sure there'll be other members, and I'm sure the cabinet member will want to defend his position, but I don't think we're in a place at the moment where we get the importance of tourism to the local economy. And that's not a political thing. That's an economic perspective that I hold. That's an opinion that I hold. I think it's appalling. I really, really do. And I want to put that on record. I mean, you know, we're going to go through the whole summer without any statistical evidence of what the footfall is, to provide, is it Scarborough figures, Nicola? the Scarborough STEAM figures for next year. We won't even know where we are next year. So it's going to take a couple of years to really unravel this mess that we've got in. I'm so shocked. I even really, I'm going to say this in front of David. So I know that you guys are going to want to come along to the town council, and you're going around with a begging bowl. Sorry, the way I put it, but effectively are looking for cash really to fund our tourist information centre. If we know that employs more people than the other sector in Monmouthshire, and it is one of the biggest employers, why on earth would you want to close the front door on that? It's beyond me. Sorry if I'm being so negative, because this lady's really come along with some really refreshing ideas. It's great to see somebody that wants to work in collaboration with us. I get it, because I live right on the Y. But I just don't think we're in that place at the moment. Sorry to be so negative.
If I can just come in on that, if it would be helpful at any point for us in collaboration with Nicola to do a presentation to whoever you thought from within the council, whether that was members or staff or whoever it needed to be, we would be very happy to do that, because sometimes just having a private sector view will sway it. I don't think we would be saying anything much that Nicola isn't perfectly capable of saying without us. But if having different people saying it makes a difference, we'd be very happy to do that.
Yeah, rather than just me saying it.
It is actually what happened in the Forest of Dean, and one of the things that led to the reopening of the Tourism Information Centre in Colford, a presentation that we did there.
Yeah, no.
Because not all the members were familiar with the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people thought that tourism was about day trips and family outings, which it is, but I don't think they realised the really heavy-duty economic impact of the area.
Absolutely.
And when we showed those figures, which their own staff had, it nevertheless made the difference.
I'm going to let Kelly come back in as well, because I know she wants to respond as well to Councillor Watts, and then go back to
Thanks, Chair. I didn't pick up the first half, but I think I've managed to piece it together. And I think, just to reassure everybody, I think that as a council, we totally get the economic added value of tourism. I think as a council, we've been well sighted on it for some time. We've made some quite significant investments, not just with our own resources, because we don't have any resources, we just don't, but we've been able to mobilise the resources of others. We've invested heavily in things like events and attractions, and we've seen the benefit because of the uplift in the STEAM figures in the last 12 months. But there is an economic reality for us as a council as well, and you'll all know that we lost 15% in my department of our budget in 1 year last year, which is an extremely big hit to have to cope with, and that's when we're maxing out on generating levels of income as well. So I don't think it's a presentation that needs to be delivered to members, because I don't just think it's a council decision anymore. I don't just think it's a council responsibility anymore to keep TICs open, because there is no money for it. We're making money as fast as we can based on the current service formats. But the reason why we're taking Monmouthshire into future Monmouthshire territory is to have to think about the kind of operating model we need in the future to sustain. So I totally get the points that are being raised, and I support them 100%, but it cannot be an activity that we just expect the council to run and fund in the future, because those resources just won't be there. So I lost 15% of my entire budget last year, same again this year. Over the next 4 years, we're going to have to find another 16 million. That is the economic reality of a situation. And when your net budget is 150 million prior to local taxation, then it doesn't give you much leverage. So we have to think of other ways and means and be ever inventive and imaginative if we're going to keep these things going.
Chair, can I just come back on that point? That there is that what we're seeing is a spiral down, really. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, in as much as if you simply don't invest in this, tourism won't come. They go elsewhere next time. And then it goes on. There's a microeconomic level. In the same way, if you start cutting back on the employment of Monmouthshire County Council's employees, that has an immediate economic negative effect, and therefore it's a kind of spiral down. It's economically insane to shut the front door. Sorry to repeat this on it. It just makes absolutely no economic sense at all.
I absolutely agree with you, but is that the role and function of the council? And when the council doesn't have the resources, what do we do about it? We don't just say no, we shut the doors. We have to think more imaginatively about how we mobilise those resources. I cannot conjure up money that is not in my budgets. And Nicola just the other day sent out a list of things that her and her team of one other person has been doing. And it's extraordinary, but we're relying on goodwill at the moment. And, you know, goodwill is a finite resource. And I absolutely take your point. I don't take your point, though, about council employment. And if we reduce that, that has an economic impact. Because by the same token, we know in the region, and I'll talk about it in a few minutes' time with City Deal, we're over-reliant on the public sector for jobs. That's why our productivity levels are so low. You mentioned Bristol earlier on and having a high proportion of private sector jobs which are driving growth. This is the balance that we need to try and get right in our economy. And it's one of the big issues that I think we're going to have to grapple with over the next few years.
I've got three members who want to come in. Councillor Wintle, Councillor Prosser, Councillor Dovey. Is it all on the same issue, and then Councillor Edwards as well? Because otherwise I'll move around. But if it's the same issue, I'll follow that first then. So Councillor Wintle.
I agree with you, Kelly. You know, and it's the simple things that we should be doing that would help the tourism. For example, in Monmouth, we had a traffic order put out for the bus bay, the coach bay, because at the moment it's a coach bus bay, and it's being taken up by local buses parking in there. The tourist coaches cannot stop; they carry straight on. On the odd days when they are allowed to park, the town is full of tourists. You know, but this traffic order is taken, well, last November, I believe it was. It was started, still not in place. So it can't be, the coach bay cannot be painted, the signs cannot go up. How are we doing? It's simple things like that.
I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Wintle. It's the other things that impact tourism that we have to get right. And I know Kath and Mark are in conversation all of the time, because we recognise as well that sometimes the planning system is not always seen or perceived to be the friend of tourism. So you're right, it's about understanding how we can get those wider effects by being more joined up and focused on the prize as an entire council, not just as individual departments who are trying to do their own jobs, and rightfully so, but sometimes perhaps negatively impacting what we're trying to achieve.
I don't like defending Mark, but in this instance, he's not to blame.
Councillor Prosser.
Yes, I'd like to take a step back. I'm saying to myself, what's the message I'm getting here from this scrutiny meeting today? And we had a business breakfast, and we had small businesses and the agencies attending. And the lesson I'm learning is that those who attended found it immensely beneficial, right? All of a sudden, they had an inroad into the workings and thinkings of a local authority. And a lot of these issues we can debate till the cows come home about who's got money, who hasn't, where should it be, where shouldn't it be, and all the rest of it. But if you look at it in full context, I would like to see a bit more of breakfast meetings, breakfast forums, business forums, where there's a lot more engagement, you know, so that the private sector, the small businesses, feel like they're getting, they have pound of flesh, if you like, that they're having an input, and then they're getting feedback from those forums as well. And I know it's an easy thing to do, because it doesn't cost a heck of a lot of money just to organise a meeting somewhere. But in Abergavenny, I know that the Chamber of Commerce there has sort of gone to the wall for a while, and we lost the bid process and all those sorts of things. So there's a little bit of apathy, but we need to get it back. We need to get those organisations, and they're not going to come back as an organisation unless they see enthusiasm and engagement, and they need that engagement, I feel. So anything we can do as an authority, I would suggest, to bring back those sorts of forums and meetings where you invite the small businesses as well as the large, but mainly small, would be beneficial, I think. Things like IT and broadband. I was in a new shop in Abergavenny yesterday, and she said, sorry about the delay in putting your appointment on. She said, but I'm having problems with my internet. A brand new shop, you know, and it was 10 times as slow as any other BT for some reason, and they're trying to get it sorted. So feedback from those sorts of things would be useful in those forums. So the message, as far as I'm concerned, is can we have a few more engagement exercises?
Nicola?
Yes, just to come back on that, Councillor Prosser, we do actually run a Visit Monmouthshire networking event annually. So to the last one, you know, we had quite a number of businesses attend that, and that is an opportunity to listen to businesses. But also, I mean, I would say with tourism, it's probably one of those industries where we actually network quite a lot. There are a lot of meetings going on regionally and nationally. We're attending exhibitions and events where we get to talk to private sector partners on a very, very regular basis. And I think you would agree with that, Fiona.
Okay, if I can move us back to what we were discussing then, so the tourism information centres, and I think Councillor Debbie, did you want to follow up on that item? So I know Councillor Edwards was going to come in as well, so, oh gosh.
Yes, with regard, just briefly with regard to the numbers and people come in, I've raised this before and I've thought about it. It's one of the problems we had with the last breakfast, and it was very successful for the people that came, but there were a lot of people that didn't even know it was going on. And I raised the issue then, and I was told how difficult it was pulling together the basis of the databases. I've thought about that a bit. Perhaps we ought to look at the sectors, if you like, the business sectors. Try and get a grip of the various sectors and see who we would want to invite to them. So not make it so wide. If you're talking about business, industry and that sort of thing, it could be more narrow, and we'd probably be better able to identify them. If you do it on a wide basis, trying to attract everybody, well, then perhaps that doesn't work. But the fact of the matter is, whoever runs the business breakfasts, and I know there's a concern about who it should be, whether it should be us or some other facet of the county. I think the one thing they do need to have is a better database, and that is something we ought to be treating as a priority, because the one we've got now is obviously rubbish for the purpose we used it last time. The thing I wanted to speak to mainly though was the TIC in Colford and vis-a-vis the TIC we've got in Jepslow, which basically isn't working. Could I just ask, is there a cash contribution of any sort towards the TIC in Colford? I'd like,
sorry, a cash contribution from who?
I'd like to know how the business model works.
How it's
from
funded.
Colford.
My understanding is that Colford Town Council provide the premises, and the staffing is voluntary, and the expertise in setting it up is with a lot of cooperation from our members, so private sector people giving their time as volunteers, some of whom volunteer in the sense of standing behind the counter. Some of them gave a lot of expertise in getting it going in the first place.
So the Forest of Dean are not making any cash contribution, they're providing the premises.
Yes.
Do they pay the overheads for the premises?
Yes, they must
like
do.
Electricity, that sort of thing?
Assuming that they do. I don't deal with the figures for that, but I'm assuming they do, because upstairs in the same building there are other voluntary organisations. There's Citizens Advice and various other things in the same building. So I'm sure they're covering that building. Yes. There isn't really another running cost of the operation, because the staffing of the inquiries is voluntary, so the running costs of the building shared with other organisations in the building, and that's it.
Okay, because I know in Chepstow there are people there that are really very willing to work on a volunteer basis at the TIC, and they're not without enough intelligence to be able to get their head around where you should go and to seek train advice or something or other like that. I'm sure there is that And I just wonder if there is the basis of a model here for the TIC in Chepstow. I understand full well the point that Kelly has made in terms of budgets. I mean, I've asked about the TIC with Bob Greenland until he's sick and tired of me raising it. I think the lunacy lies elsewhere and is historic, but the issue now is the fact of the matter is we really have, if it is possible, if this model could be made to work for the Chepstow TEIC, and we got people like the Chamber of Commerce involved in it in some way, maybe the economic group down there as well, then we perhaps now could get more involvement from them, because they are beginning to realise in the town the impact of the TIC working or failing to work properly. So could I suggest that this might be something that we take forward? And I think what I think we should have is a presentation to the cabinet, if you like, and officers who would be intimately involved in putting this together from our guest today. I think she talks a lot of sense. I mean, and the point that Councillor Watts made about the revenue that we derive from tourism in the county, it is absolute lunacy that we are not trying to explore every avenue, and if we've got an alternative here, we should be following it up. I'm trying to be positive. I'm
Yeah,
not
Chair, I absolutely agree with that, and Fiona always talks a great deal of sense, and it does sound like an eminently sensible model. I think the point I was trying to make to Councillor Watts is we could fund the TIC next year. I could put the money aside in the budget. I'd have to cut something else, or I'd have to take somebody's job to do it, because that is honestly what we're down to.
I'm sure if you engage with maybe other members, I'm sure I would have would be more than happy to sit down with you and give you an appraisal with other members who will take an interest in the economic political proposal and some of the daft things that we've invested in, and then highlighted some of the things that we may want to invest in that we might consider to be equally daft, to ensure that we're saving an essential service like this. And I say that.
I agree. I agree it's an essential service, but I'd encourage anyone to look at my budgets line by line by line and tell, you know, if you can, find somewhere where I can either save or make more money. I am that closely acquainted with my budgets, because my responsibility is people's employment. You know, that is something I take very seriously. But I think that the model that Fiona has set out, whereby you've got town council, you've got the private sector, you've got volunteers, is something that we could fashion and would give us a much more sustainable footing. And the other thing that I think we should be thinking about is when Kath and I talk about City Deal in a few moments' time, you know, the potential we've got there with £1.28 billion worth of investment, plus the leverage potential, you know, plus the linkages to attractions, industry, hoteliers, restaurateurs who want to come to the region and mobilise that effect. We need to make sure that we're really tapping into this, because tourism, heritage, culture is what Monmouthshire is known for. You know, we're the kind of bridgehead, aren't we? We're the gateway to Wales, but the gateway to England. So if we can't leverage some of that City Deal to have the kind of impact that we're talking about today, then there's possibly not something right there.
One moment. So in terms of taking this forward as an action, though, can we look at maybe exploring this model further, and maybe explore it with you, Fiona, as well, in terms of what contribution you could make in a similar way to what's provided in Colford? Because it sounds like a great relationship opportunity.
Yes, I think I will probably end up passing you to one of my colleagues who's been much more involved with it than I have. But yes, we as an association can find you somebody that knows it in and out.
Thanks, Fiona. Councillor Dovey, and then I'll bring Nicola back in, please.
Just a very quick one. Well, you another person with you, I would say, because you speak with the passion, and I know you run your own business, etc., and I think you should be at any presentation that is made. But the point that Kelly made is a good one in responding to Councillor Watts, in that there are choices, and a lot of these choices come in front of us for us to say whether they should go ahead or not. Perhaps really we ought to look at some of these things that we think are marginal and weigh them against whether we should be putting the TIC on a firm footing rather than some of the other projects that we get put in front of us. Because the TIC is without a doubt fundamental to our success in tourism and sustaining the prime position that we have.
Thanks,
Thank
Councillor
you,
Dubby. I'll ask Nicholas to come in, and I do have Councillor Edwards, though, I know, is waiting to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make the point, really, that we obviously already do use quite a lot of volunteers within the TIC service already. We have managed to develop a more sustainable model in Abergavenny, which works very well, which is a partnership with the Town Council, with Abergavenny and District Town Council, and with the Tithe Barn, St Mary's Priory Trust. So that is a model that works very well, and the Tourism Association there actually contribute to the running of that TIC. The other thing to mention is that we are developing a project under the RDP to look to do a feasibility study about how we develop sustainable visitor information models across Monmouthshire and Newport. So there is a piece of work about to be commissioned which will look at how these things can be funded. I don't think anybody disagrees about the importance of tourist information centres. I'm a firm believer in them. They're absolutely fantastic, and they do generate wealth. It's who pays for that service. And I firmly believe that those sorts of services, they need to be, the costs of them need to be shared more fairly with those who benefit. So, and that has been the thrust of our, the shared service model that we've developed in Abergavenny, and that we've tried to develop in other areas as well. But that you will all have a chance to contribute to that feasibility study that is looking at how we can deliver these types of services that are critical to growing tourism in the future. So you will have an input into that.
Fiona, did you want to come in then? And
just very briefly on that, I don't think you've said anything there that we wouldn't agree with, except the definition of those who benefit, because those who benefit is often deemed to be the private sector tourism businesses. Of course they benefit, but the whole point about this is that it is the area or the residents as a whole, because it's an economic benefit. So when you take into consideration who benefits, please remember that it's the entire population and not only the obvious sector businesses.
Thank you, Fiona. Well,
Sorry,
briefly, because I want to bring Councillor Edwards in.
That's kind of entirely my argument from an economic perspective. It is effectively the community that benefits, in the same way that I argued that the central point of employment is Monmouthshire County Council. If that goes, then those people simply don't have money to spend in local shops, and it becomes a downward spiral. It's microeconomics, really. It's fundamental, and I'm sorry, but it's a shame that the cabinet member seems to be almost economically illiterate in understanding that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards, I'm sorry, it's taken a while to bring you in, but...
Thank you, Chairman. Quite honestly, Abergavenny wouldn't survive without the tourists. And let's be quite frank about it, all North Monmouthshire would be in serious difficulty if we didn't have a vibrant tourist commitment. Right, so our TIC is currently operating at, we've moved from premises into smaller premises, but can you tell me, Nicola, what sort of numbers of people go through the new TIC compared to the old one? I think it's important that we establish that sort of figure to start with. I think long term, of course, when the hub is redeveloped in the town hall, I would certainly expect to see the TIC move from where it is at the moment to a town centre spot, because I think it would be ideal. Those numbers to me are important. Yes, we are a tourist town. Time and time again, we attract business to Abergavenny and give them 4 or 5 years, they get established. They then move where they can get big grants. You know, and it's rubbing it in when you think that we had a very prosperous cheese company in Abergavenny who went to Blenavon and have just invested, I know the factory was burnt down, but they've just invested £10 million in building. So I presume a lot of that money came from, may well be the insurance claim, but I'm sure there'll be EC money or even Welsh Government money they're supporting. And that's what happens right through, well, it affects Monmouthshire probably right the way through. To hang on to industry in the south of the county, I don't know what benefits they have, or they've been there for so long, they don't want to move. But it is serious. I think I'm going to leave it there, because with the tourist, if I can have those numbers, I think you're coming back probably to our next meeting, and with steam and all the rest of it. And I think it would be important for us to know exactly where we are.
Are you happy for me to bring those numbers to that meeting?
Yeah.
Councillor Edward, I don't have them with me today.
No.
I mean, I know that they are slightly lower than they were when we were in the more, the higher profile building. But I will bring you those numbers, and obviously the hours of opening are more limited than they used to be, so that obviously has an impact on numbers. From my recollection, I don't think they're hugely different, but I will bring the exact numbers for you next time.
Just remind me, the funding comes, I thought we were still giving, Kelly, I thought we were still giving something towards the TIC, the Monmouthshire.
Yes, we do. In Abergavenny, yes, we do.
Yeah, and you get the town council. Is Brecon still giving something at all?
They make an in-kind contribution because they do the administration, management and employment of the staff. So the financial contributions come from Abergavenny Town Council, Monmouthshire County Council, ADTA make a small contribution, and also individual businesses in the town make an additional contribution. And obviously the space is provided by St Mary's Priory Trust.
Yeah, well, I think we are lucky that on the town council there's at least 2 members who are terribly enthusiastic. In fact, they're the 2 representatives of the town on the tourist thing, and I think that has made a difference. The one member has been a member of the Abergavenny Tourist Association for quite a few years now. So that is important. And do the church themselves, you've got 2 sides in your TIC. You have the official side, if you like. Then you have the church guides, for use of a better word. Do they help at all?
Yes, they do. There's quite a lot of crossover. In fact, many of the St Mary's Priory church guides have done the ambassador training and do help out with visitor information as well. So, yeah, there is a huge crossover and they do help.
Has there been a fairly substantial drop in income from, because they used to sell quite a lot in the old TIC?
Again, I haven't got those figures on me because we don't take the income ourselves. The income is taken by Brecon Beacons National Park Authority, but the end of year figures are available to show, how much they spent on stock, what the sales were from that stock. That information is available and I can bring it to the next meeting.
I'm conscious we haven't really covered signage, and I know there's a couple of members that wanted to raise an issue on signage. I'd like to do that as part of this item. I know Councillor Dovey's indicated he wanted to speak, but...
Very briefly, I'd just like to disassociate myself from the comments that Councillor Watts made about the cabinet member being financially illiterate. I couldn't make that judgment. I don't see how Councillor Watts should. Anyway, so I don't want to be associated with that.
Thank you, Councillor Dovey. Okay, thank you, Councillor Dovey. Councillor Wintle, did you want to bring up, I know you in the pre-meeting we were talking about signage. Was there anything you wanted to raise around that? Because I'm keen we do just cover that off today, so we've got Roger here who can respond.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, people, I know Monmouth basically, and there is no big sign pointing to the Shire Hall saying the TIC's in there. People, say they sort of, oh, that's a lovely building. Oh, go through the doors and they find it. Some do. Majority go walking by. Can we have a standard sign for TIC? I know a few years ago when I was in Germany, and I go into Holland and things like that, they had a standard sign, little triangle, 3 stars. Everybody knew that was tourism. The tourist office was there. Simple. We don't need no fancy signs, just one stuck on the wall somewhere.
I can respond to that if you like. They do have a banner on the outside of the railings saying there's visitor information. What you're referring to is a sort of standard tourist information sign that's seen across Europe and across the world. That is for networked TICs. Monmouth no longer is a networked TIC. It doesn't have, it's not a dedicated TIC, but it does give visitor information. It gives very good visitor information. There are pedestrian signs to it, to Shire Hall, and visitor information. As I say, there is that banner on the outside. What they can't use is the official Visit Wales sign. But there are an awful lot of TICs that can't use that these days because they're not meeting the standards for delivery of the service in terms of the number of the staffing levels, the number of opening hours, the rest of it. It's a technical thing. But there is a big sign on the outside of the railings.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of bureaucratic rubbish, doesn't it?
Councillor Prossum?
Yeah, just a small, it's not really for this meeting, but in Abergavenny, I was standing on the opposite side to the Tourist Information Centre, and I looked up and there's a brown sign pointing to the old location down the bus station. So unless you noticed you were standing outside it, you'd start toddling off, going away from where it actually is, because the brown sign is outside. So really, a review of the signage. If we move these locations, we have to look at those signage as well. So it's just a request, really, can you review that?
Yeah, just to respond to that one, that signage has been reviewed. What you're looking at, brown and white signage, is highway signage. And what it's asking people to do, obviously they can't stop outside the TIC in a car, so they have to go round to the car park, which is where the old TIC was. But there is pedestrian signage, which is a different colour, which shows people how to get there on foot. But what you were looking at is the brown and white sign, which is highways.
Want to come in first?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. It has been raised recently about the quality of signage in the towns, particularly around finger posts and where the attractions are. What's on the maps, the town maps, and whether or not they could be refreshed, albeit I think they're town council responsibility, but nevertheless, it's all the same as far as a tourist is concerned, isn't it? So it is we are, in the last car park review, we put some money aside for some improvements, which are to include signage. So whether we can pick up on this at the same time would also be a benefit. We also, through the obstructions in the highway, when we talked about the A-boards and the like, we also raised about working with businesses about how we could improve the signage. So again, we may be able to use that as an avenue to explore then to improve in some. It will have to be modest because there isn't a great deal of money around, but at least to make the sign a bit more up to date than it has been. I don't know if you wish to talk about brown signs now.
Yeah, just in terms of the policy and how that's being led on from your teams with the advertising policy and that side of things.
Yeah, on the brown side, there is a policy, but a member in Nicola's team worked very imaginatively with Highways colleagues in interpreting that and with businesses to put brown signs in place. That post no longer exists, so we have met and discussed it about how we may nevertheless still work with businesses to try and offer that opportunity. So my intention is, given also greater commitment towards advertising and creating income through advertising and posts created there, that we use that resource now to try and promote businesses through brown signage. It will mean that we have to look at the, I think the policy needs looking at in any event. My recollection of it is a little bit hazy, but I think it's fairly prescriptive. The officer who was dealing with, as I say, was very imaginative and innovative in his interpretation, and so we got it the way we wanted to, but perhaps now is the time to look at the policy at the same time. However, we will have to draw it into that resource which we find available to manage advertising generally, and A-boards and tables and displays and those type of things. I think that's the only place we're going to find now resource to be able to do that. So I think that's probably where it's logically going to have to lie for the future.
Can I just check then, Roger, in terms of you're saying you're going to look at the policy, is there any timescales then we could bring that back to this committee, do you think, to look at it further? Because I know it ties into a lot of our wider objectives.
I think that's something I have to take up with the officers, look at where we are, look at what's available, look at what precedent is elsewhere, and then bring that back. I wouldn't wish to commit just at the moment, given that we haven't got resources in place to manage our obstructions on the highway, the A-boards and the displays and the like. Our commitment is to try and draw it all together, I think, but I need some time to work on a timetable and bring that back to yourself.
Okay, we'll put it on the work programme, and then when we meet back in September, we'll look at it again as part of the work programme as to where we're at and request an update then. Sorry, Councillor Minto, because I've got Councillor Evans and then Councillor Watts.
If we keep leaving it to, say, the autumn, the main tourism is gone. You know, we should have had it in place in the spring to catch the tourists coming in. No, we can't keep blaming them all the time on us.
Okay, that's noted. Nicholas, you want to come in then, and then I'll bring Councillor Evans in.
Yeah, just on a positive note, really, that a huge amount of work was undertaken under the last RDP programme on signage. Pedestrian and highway signage was audited and reviewed by consultants across 11 settlements in the county. Some money was also secured to implement many of the recommendations that came out of those reviews, which included consultations with local communities. Many of those communities, like Ersk and like Caerwent, had new town entry signage done under that scheme. There were lots of improvements done. So I think we're starting from a fairly good position that, okay, there are some issues, but try and be aware that as soon as you put a sign up, it goes out of date quite quickly. You know, a business will close or something will move. So it's very difficult, if not impossible, to keep it completely accurate all of the time. But I think compared with most other authority areas, our signage is in quite good condition. And a lot of work has been done to update it to make sure that the town entry signs are accurate in terms of the symbols for the historic attractions and things like that. There is more work that's done identifying improvements that we didn't have the money to actually implement. So we're always looking for funding to become available, and if it does, then we will apply for it and try to secure it to make sure that we can implement all the recommendations that we've identified. So it isn't that we're abandoning tourism signage altogether, but we don't have the capacity within our team at the moment to be dealing with those one-off applications.
I want to bring Councillor Evans in. Is that okay, or is there something very specifically on what Nicholas just said, Councillor Wintle? Is it a separate point? Because if it is, I'll bring Councillor Evans in first, if that's okay. Yeah, okay. Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've listened quite intense this morning. First of all, there's a question. On the signs, we used to get grants from Welsh Assembly. Do we still get them? And if we do, how they distributed across Monmouthshire? The amounts of money.
There was support available. It wasn't from Welsh Government. It was actually from the RDP project that supported applications where they met certain criteria, but that funding is no longer available.
So we get nothing at all from anywhere. So all the signs we are talking about now then have got to come out from Monmouthshire County Council's pocket.
Well, there's a charge. Usually that cost is passed on to individual businesses. So there's a charge for the administration of the application at the moment, and then there's the cost of the signage. If it's to promote a particular business, then that business would pay that cost.
Thanks, Councillor Evans. Councillor Winton and Councillor Watts, I think you were both indicating.
Yeah.
Do you want to...
Thank you, Chair. I was just thinking that the Chamber of Commerce does the big town maps, don't they? Why haven't they got all the places of interest, stuck on there, and highlighting them on the maps so that people can go and see? 'Cause I quite often see tourists wondering, oh, where else are we going to go? What else is there around? They just don't know because it's not signposted. We don't seem to be helping them as well as we could be, is my point.
In terms of the town maps, again, most of those were redone under the RDP programme, and they do exactly what you're suggesting, that they do identify the key attractions in that area and the ones selected by the town council in those towns and settlements that they wanted to promote on those town maps. So they have been updated, and they do. I think we worked with the Chamber of Commerce in Monmouth to identify those key attractions.
There's an opportunity there for us to write to the Chamber of Commerce around that point, so we put that as an action to do that. It was something that was raised at the business breakfast as well, so it was a good point to raise up. Councillor Edwards?
Follow what Nicholas has said. Because the Ice Statefoot is coming now in a fortnight's time, the Town Council actually are printing the town map in a little leaflet. It's a giveaway leaflet. We're having a 100,000 printed. I think it's costing us £1,000. Sorry. We've had 100,000 leaflets ready to issue to all the visitors. There's going to be, I hope, in Abergavenny over the next couple of weeks for the Eisteddfod. So we've used the town map as the central piece with a verbiage on the back there, highlighting the various numbers and what people will see if they come up into town. Okay.
If you can send us a PDF of that map, we can forward it on to the National Eisteddfod so that they can distribute it to the visitors staying in their camping and caravan accommodation, so as a digital copy. Right. So if you can send us an electronic copy, and we can also have it on our website to help you distribute. Thank you.
I'm going to close the item now then, members, unless there's any further contributions on this item, but it's needless to say it's something we keep a close eye on as a committee, so it will be coming back to us. We'll have the STEAM results and the information back at the September committee, is that right, Nicola? I want to say a very big thank you to Fiona for all your input today. It's good to know the positives, it's good to know the areas where we could work more closely, and you'll be very welcome to attend future meetings, and we will of course keep you updated on progress from today's meeting. In terms of some of those specific actions then, we're aware that the Destinations Management Plan is going to go out to consultation, so again that's something we'll all no doubt want to be involved in as both a committee and as an individual ward councillors. In terms of the Chepstow TIC issue, which had a lot of strong feeling around that, understandably, I think we'll look to explore the options there around the Colford model, so maybe something we can look to take forward, and we'd like to see maybe some response to that in terms of engagement working around the Colford model. And in terms of looking at the policy on the brown and white signage, again, we'll put that on the work programme and wait to hear when we might be able to see a firm date for that to come to the committee. And I think the final thing is that looking ahead now to next year, in February, I believe we've got supplementary planning guidance on tourism planning to come to us ahead of the adoption of the SPG in early April. So there'll be an opportunity again to discuss the issues around that. Councillor Dovey, did you want to make a final point on this item?
Yes, was mentioned as well, the database.
Yep, no problem. We'll raise that. That was raised at the last meeting, yes. And I know Kath wants to come in just briefly on the breakfast, but I'm not going to open a discussion now on how those breakfasts were run because today's item was very specific around tourism item and the outcomes. Kath?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to say really that the database, we've got over 2,300 businesses on a database, all of which have been split into sectors. I'm not sure the issue is with the database. I think what we need to be aware of is there are a plethora of networking activities that are going on throughout the county and beyond. As we've mentioned, you know, as was mentioned by Fiona and Nicola, particularly in terms of tourism, it may well be an opportunity perhaps if councillors were able perhaps to attend some of the networking events themselves if they want to speak directly to businesses and perhaps to bring those observations back. But unfortunately we're not in a position to be able to run business breakfasts. We don't have the capacity or the budget to do that, and to be quite frank, it's quite a crowded marketplace. So it may well be something that you may wish to consider in the future perhaps.
I'm sure I look back at this, like, does our new website, enterprise website, does it include a list of those dates of networking events? So we just can go as a committee then back and look at those, and I think that's a very good suggestion that we could go along to maybe some of those business breakfasts ourselves to gain opinion and views from those breakfasts that are already in existence. Great. Okay, members, we summarise there then, and we've got a number of actions to take forward. So thank you very much to all the officers, especially Nicola, and again, thank you very much to Fiona. That's great. So we'll move on to the final main agenda item, which is for Kelly to give us an update on City Deal, and we've got a PowerPoint presentation to receive on this item, so we'll wait for the IT to work. Fiona, you're welcome to stay to the end of the meeting if you'd like to. Of course you can. Yep, you'd be very welcome to.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The agenda item actually reads the Cardiff Capital Region Board, but to be honest, the board arrangements for the region are so intertwined with the City Deal, which is the bit that Kath, Mark and I and others are involved in. We thought we'd start with that today because it's the leader of the council that really probably needs to provide the update on the Cardiff Capital Region Transition Board, of which he is a member. But just to put things in context before I start, because it sounds quite complicated already, doesn't it? The Cardiff Capital Region Transition Board and then the City Deal. So just to be clear, the Cardiff Capital Region Transition Board is the board that the former Minister Edwina Hart convened to take the committee from where it was in terms of the first board that was established to where it now needs to be. So along with other representatives from the private sector, from government, from Wales Government, local government, our leader sits on that transition board. Now, alongside that, we've obviously had in principle, City Deal agreed with central government and Wales Government. Now, what that City Deal is meaning that we have to do is create some of the governance structures that will enable that deal, that devolution deal with government, to be taken forward. So the Transition Board and the City Deal are kind of, if you like, in the same space. They're not competing, but they're fulfilling broadly similar roles. So what's happening at the moment is we're seeing the Transition Board and the City Deal leaders working ever closer so they can establish one coherent structure. So that's what's going on at this time. And that's really why all I can really talk to this afternoon is the City Deal, because the two things are so enmeshed. And I think over the next few weeks and months now, we'll begin to see that clearer governance structure starting to emerge. So if that's okay, Chair, and if I talk to the City Deal components, which I think is probably the more interesting bit for this committee, because it's not just about the governance, it's about the ambition and about the investment that we can bring to the region. So you all know what the City Deal is. I won't talk about this slide too much, but it is a devolution deal. So in exchange for greater accountability for actions, we have to commit to growing our economy significantly. And productivity, as Councillor Watts said earlier, is the name of the game. We have to increase productivity if we want to increase prosperity in our region. So the City Deal is predicated on...
Kelly, sorry to interrupt you. Would you mind just putting it onto the slideshow on the PowerPoint? Because it's just on the... Sorry, yeah, just so that members can read.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, members. Okay, so the City Deal comprises a £1.2 billion infrastructure investment fund. So that's the fund from which we can invest in projects, programmes, but we have to be able to show a return on that investment. We only access that investment, and of course it will mean our own borrowing to put into that investment fund alongside the other 9 local authorities. But we can only really draw on that fund if we're sure that what we're taking forward is capable of yielding an uplift in GVA. So everything has to be predicated on that. So the pot should be self-sustaining, because everything we do generates a return which we can either use to service our borrowing, and once we've serviced our borrowing, obviously everything else goes back into that self-sustaining pot. So it is, of course, about making sure we've got that triple helix of government, academia, so for example, higher education institutions and the private sector working as one to really corral and deliver the City Deal. So the vision that the leaders have agreed for the City Deal is obviously majorly focused on improvement of communities, making sure that we bring together the kind of collaborations and partnerships that will build better connections and greater opportunity. So our economy becomes much more internationally distinctive. You know, that is the main focus of their ambition. So yes, it's about local tactics and outcomes, because what happens on the ground in the region is of course important, but they're also looking to build a global profile for the Cardiff Capital Region at the same time. Many challenges then for us to address. Obviously we know that there are big issues around worklessness right throughout the region, probably second, third generational worklessness actually. High welfare costs, I think the highest of any region in the UK, so currently estimated to be about £4 billion per annum coming into our region to support dependency on the state. We know that we don't have enough listed or anchor companies in the region. When you compare us to other parts of the UK, we fall short. Our levels of research and development, which is particularly important, I think, especially if we're looking at innovation and digital, as we've already talked about in our economy, are the lowest in the UK, which is a big, it's an impairment to growth on every single scale. Because for one, it means that we're not really equipped for what's coming, for what the future is bringing. We don't have that foresight function. Obviously, in terms of transport connectivity in particular, we're not as well served as we might be. So you've probably all heard about the South East Wales Metro and plans for electrification and new road and rail links. And overall, even though we're not a badly skilled region, there is a mismatch between the level of skills that we have available and the opportunities. So some big structural and systemic issues for us to begin addressing. There are some opportunities. I've mentioned skills already. You know, we do have a fairly skilled population. We've got key strengths in terms of emerging sectors like financial, creative, digital, cyber, energy, and in particular life sciences. Health and Medicare is something we're quite well known for in the region. And we've got a high percentage of graduates. Our universities spin out more intellectual property than some of the big universities in England, in fact. So our universities do extremely well. But when we spin out intellectual property, we don't always commercialise it and productise it and take it up the levels. That's one of the big blockages that we've got. So big innovation potential in the Cardiff Capital Region, but we're not embedding it. We're not doing enough to make it part and parcel of what we're about, which again is a big structural barrier. But of course, there's all the other things that we know and love about our region. Fantastic natural environment, a relatively, across the region, affordable place to live compared to some parts of the UK. Fantastic culture, heritage. I think community spirit is probably very distinctive and something we should be talking about more. I think that's key to the quality of life debate. So the core aim of the City Deal then is to make sure that we're turning the economic tide, that we're actually, I suppose, facing down this big issue that we've got around productivity. We're not a productive economy, especially when compared to other parts of the UK. And I think apart from the North East, we are the worst performing economy in the whole of the UK, and we have been for some time. And as things stand, that shows no signs of changing. So there are big, as I say, structural issues for us to address here. So the aim of the City Deal then is for the 10 councils to work together with proper formalised joint working arrangements which allow them to act as one and to make decisions in the interest of the region and regionalism. It's also, as I say, to work with partners like the university who are responsible for the vast majority of intellectual property which is created in the region. The business focus is absolutely key and something I think we've got to get better at in terms of how we work across the Cardiff capital region. It can't, you know, local authorities have an enabling role in this, but we're not the ones that are going to create the wealth and create the jobs. So partnership with the private sector is the most important aspect of how this deal will be delivered. So it's about making sure that we don't just invest in incremental change and projects that we think, oh yeah, you know, that'll be okay, that'll make a difference. You know, it's got to be paradigm shift stuff. You know, what is going to really ensure that we have those uplifts in productivity. So our City Deal is predicated not just on that uplift in gross value added, it's about making an impact and a reduction on all of the money that central government puts into our region. So for example, they're not just charging us with uplifting productivity, they're saying you've got to get more people into work. You've got to get people in work higher up the value chain because they don't earn enough. So our City Deal is predicated on those two things. So in terms of the themes that the City Deal is starting to be organised under then, there's one around innovation and digital, which Monmouthshire has led on to date, and we've produced an innovation prospectus which details the kinds of things that we think could best power up the innovation and digital economy in the region. So our leader has been the spokesperson for that. He's been the guy that's pitched to central government and Wales government some of the very clear ideas that we've got to shape thinking in this area. Related to that, there's another theme that Blaenau Gwent has been leading on around improving skills and training. So helping people in work and helping people into work is obviously a key area of focus there. There's a stream around place shaping. So the points that various of you were making earlier, you can't build housing in isolation of the infrastructure, in isolation of the jobs, in isolation of the connectivity, whether that's broadband or transport infrastructure. And there's something as well then about the support that we give to businesses as to how we work as 10 local authorities to make sure that we're working more connectedly and coherently to power up the sector. Transport is obviously key and it's a standalone theme. And obviously lots of that has been I think lots of that to date has been dominated by debates around the metro. And I'll talk to that in a few minutes' time. But it is about creating wealth. I know we talk about job creation lots, but actually unless we create wealth and prosperity, we can't afford to pay for the jobs that need to be created. So wealth creation absolutely has to become first. And I think one of the key issues that central government have been very keen, I think, to relay to us is that as an economy, we are very dependent on the public sector. You know, we have a bloated public sector in their view, according to some other parts of the UK. And I totally get the point you were raising earlier, Councillor Watts, that yeah, we depend on it for jobs. But actually our balance is out of kilter in terms of the proportion of private and public jobs. Absolutely, absolutely right. So what might it mean for us here then? I think one of the things that Monmouthshire has been very keen to input into the City Deal is the innovation economy. Because when you look at all the evidence, the biannual innovation surveys, the things that really drive productivity in the world's most competitive economies, it's the innovation economy. That's absolutely essential. And I felt sometimes frustrated in the City Deal conversations because transport always seems to be waving above all else. And transport connectivity and infrastructure is really, really important. But so is knowledge-based capacity and capability. You need both kinds of infrastructure. And I think what we're trying to say, and Kath has been more closely aligned to these debates around the metro than myself, even if we are going to deliver a metro system, that metro system should be a test bed for innovation. What is it about it we're going to do differently to other parts of the world to get us ahead? Could it be renewable energy? What about all the data that it will generate. What are we going to do with that? How are we going to procure it? Are we just going to go out and buy the same old public transport system that others have done? Or are we going to try and use the procurement process to tackle the particular problems that we face in the region? So even if it sounds like fairly standard stuff, we want to make sure that we're doing something that keeps adding to the knowledge flows and capabilities. So it's a metro system, for example, that churns out more engineers and data analysts and keeps adding to that knowledge capacity that we need in our economy. So some of the things then around salary levels for graduates. We know some of the highest salaries payable now are in the digital and innovation industries. So looking at engineers, computer scientists, data analysts, they command the highest salaries in the world. So what can we do to make sure that our region is generating more of those? And I think that leads us on really to think about work of the future. And as a region, are we really starting to think what that looks like? Because we were at a debate earlier on in the week at a joint meeting of this select committee with CYP. And, you know, we know that 65% of our young people are going to be working in jobs that haven't yet been created. The World Economic Forum estimates that 2/3 of our workforce at the moment don't have the skills to take part in industries of the future. So we've got to start planning for this stuff now. Otherwise, it's probably going to be too late. So, okay, what kind of things do we mean then when we're talking about innovation, and why is innovation going to be so important to the Cardiff capital region? Well, as I've said, it drives productivity at a faster rate than anything else. And when you look at some of the world's most competitive economies, that's what they're known for. So, as I've said, it's about ensuring that, yes, transport and physical connectivity is important, but the knowledge capability is just as, if not even more so, important for us to make sure we're focused on both those things. I think the well-being of future generations is timed really well in this, because we can't make decisions in our city deal that are just about today. We have to show that we are looking 40, 50, 60 years out, that we have that foresight. And okay, it's impossible to tell what's going to happen, but I think it's really important we build that ability to adapt and adjust very, very quickly. So, as I've said already, you know, we don't spend enough money on things like research and development, when other parts of the UK do, and we're seeing in places like Cambridge and London and the West Country, as Councillor Watts has already alluded to, you know, fastest growing rate of private sector growth. So what is it we need to do to emulate and create some of those conditions? And, you know, there are really important things that we've got going for us in the innovation sector. I'll talk in a few minutes' time about advanced compound semiconductors. But, you know, things that are going on in our region that we could be known for in the world, that at the moment we're just not given the right level of profile to. And also, we know in our region, and in particular around Chepstow, where we've got the linkages with Bristol, we've got one of the fastest growing technology clusters in the UK. So, you know, really important we think about how we leverage that in the context of the city deal. So some of the things that we've been working on for you to know around innovation, and some of this is in the document that central government and Wales government have assigned to us as 10 local authorities. Things like an innovation district. What is it that we can do to start clustering some of these sort of technology growth opportunities? What kind of fiscal rewards and incentives can we give to companies to come and locate and grow in our regions? How can we make ourselves stand out with a different kind of an offer? I think many of you have raised lots of times the lack of capital, the lack of risk capital, in particular in our economy. Where do you go to if you need risk capital? So we plan to address that with an investment fund. Advanced compound semiconductors. I don't know how many of you know about Microsemi, which is based just, I think, is at Mytelcath, isn't it? Just outside of Caldecott. It's part of a really important cluster that we've got growing in our region. So advanced compound semiconductors are the little chips that we have in our phones that are going to replace silicon, and they're going to be in all major technologies in the future. And we've got a really big company in Cardiff and Newport called IQE, and they're renowned in the world for producing these semiconductor chips. And all of us, we've got parts of the supply chain right across the region, so Airbus, General Dynamics, Microsemi that I've just spoken about in our patch here. And as part of the city deal, government have allocated a catapult centre, like an accelerator for growth in this area. So we think that this could create about 6,500 jobs, really high-skilled, high-paid jobs in the region, if we can support that supply chain to grow and flourish. And it will be one of the only ones in the world to be able to do this. So it gives us that international distinctiveness, which is important as well. There's something around the metro. You know, the metro isn't just about moving people around. And we can't just move people around, can we? Because if all we do is create a metro that moves low-skilled, low-paid people around, then we won't have changed the game. So we were thinking about co-working spaces at metro stations, bringing people together so they can create and they can make. And the other thing that I think is important for us to think about today, and something we're particularly keen on, because it ties into our future Monmouthshire work, is a concept of a public services testbed. Central government have said to us, well, one of the things that you're known for as a region is you've got a massive public services footprint, you're 10 local authorities, you've got 2 health boards, you've got 2 fire and police authorities, you've got Office of National Statistics, you've got Intellectual Property Office, Ministry of Justice, you've got Companies House. What are you doing with your data? What are you doing to work differently? What are you doing to unlock the GVA you've got tied up in your procurement processes? You know, what are you doing, public sector, to show that you generate economic impact and wealth as well? So they've really tested us on that, and I think that is a unique opportunity for Monmouthshire, because I think we're already some way down this road. So I wanted to talk just a little bit more about the conversation that I probably hoped we were going to have on Monday at the joint meeting, and I appreciate it only came in for part of it. But I know this is the kind of thing that you're interested in, really, looking at what those big economies of the future are and understanding if we've got that potential on our patch and what we do to try and cultivate that. And some of the big analysts reckon that the big growth areas are going to be around big data and cyber security, what we're doing with open data, which is particularly important in the public sector, because we own lots of data, but we keep it closed and we keep it contained, and we don't realise the commercial value of that. There are scientists now, and we've got some in our region as well, who are capable of mapping the genetic code, so understanding what will keep us living longer, what will make us healthier and fitter. So that ties very much into our life sciences expertise in the region. And obviously then all the stuff that we have around artificial intelligence and automation. And again, something that we do have growing in our region, especially in and around Cardiff. We've got quite a growing and emerging sector around artificial intelligence. So important we think about these industries of the future and the kind of skills that we're going to need to be able to survive and adapt. So in terms of the skills bit, which is really important, I think, you know, it's key that we make sure that we're bringing educational perspectives to bear here. You know, as I said earlier, if 65% of jobs that don't yet exist require a fundamentally different skill set, what is it that we're actually ingraining in curricula in the education system to make sure our young people are prepared and they're able to adapt? So a lot of the advice and guidance that we're having from some of the big future thinkers at the moment is that things like foreign languages in schools are really important, but probably more so now are things like computer languages, technology languages, you know, not just in terms of STEM, but, you know, artificial intelligence. What does it take to program a robot? You know, all of these new things that we're going to have to learn how to do. So I think for us to survive in the global economy, there's things that we need to start thinking about now, not just in terms of our young people, but what are the skills that we all need to operate in these environments in the future. So City Deal then is meant to be about our bridge into this new bright future. There's a huge job of work that we have to do in terms of turning the corner and ensuring that we don't just move things and nudge things up incrementally, because things are changing too quickly. This has to be about evolving the paradigm, and that step change happening in our region really, really quick, which is why we've got to go for the things that don't just show a return on GVA, you know, ×1. We want to show ×5, ×10 returns on GVA. So we're really optimizing what goes in so we can get the best in terms of what comes out. So we have to be careful, I think, because, you know, transport does seem to be the mainstay of the debate, and that's really, really important. But there are other things that we have to make sure are aligned. And I think from Monmouthshire's perspective, what we're really keen to input is it's got to be about knowledge-based growth and capacity. You know, that will be the major game changer for our economy. So we've got to make sure that we're aware of global trends, what skills of the future are going to be needed, because they're all the things that we can say our region will have. That's the way we're going to get inward investment, attract the big companies, attract growth, and make sure we've got what it takes for the future. So I think, you know, for us, it is about making sure that we add value. I think that's probably the key thing we can bring to the city deal at this time. And the process from here on in is that probably by the end of this calendar year, if not this financial year, we want to be in a position where all the local authorities have signed up proper to the city deal. And we're in the process at the moment of putting together some frameworks for economic modelling and prioritisation that Kath and I are involved in, so that when the projects come forward, you don't have 10 local authorities trying to fund projects they couldn't get funding for in the past, because as Kath pointed out so eloquently yesterday, there's probably a reason why those projects haven't been funded in the past. They have to be good, credible projects that are about scale, they're about attracting leverage and other finance, because this isn't just about spending money, this is about creating investment opportunities that are fit for the future. So we've got to make sure that even before we go to modelling and prioritisation, the schemes and the programmes we've got going in are good enough, because some of the things that we've heard about probably aren't good enough. They're probably everyday things that we should be doing anyway. This is about changing the game, otherwise our economy isn't going to move forward in the way that we really need it to. And, you know, like me, I've got 2 young children. I want them to have the opportunity to stay in this region. I want them to be able to put down roots here and, you know, contribute to the economy. And I suppose the question I have to ask is, would I want them to at this time? You know, I definitely want them to be able to, but would that be my advice to them right now, today? So, you know, I think that's the conundrum for us all, isn't it, in terms of the legacy we leave for our future generations. So is that enough for today, Chair?
Yeah, really helpful.
Okay.
A great
Thank
update, and I know members will be very interested in this subject matter, and it's something we'd like to keep a close eye on and have regular updates on, and I'm sure the leader would want to be involved as well at a later date as well. Councillor Wintle?
This, you know, the picture you're painting, Kelly, is a very good picture. But what is being done to bring in the teachers that are going to teach these youngsters the modern things, ITs, and the stuff in the future? Because without that, you're banging your head against the wall. Because if they churn out the same youngsters that are coming out at the moment, you're not going to go very far.
Just to mention, sorry, Kelly, for interjecting, we did, on Monday, we had a joint select meeting with CYP. I hope all members were aware of that, because we didn't have a great turnout. Well, an invite did go out to members, but it was on this very subject matter around teachers, curriculum, how we're going to inspire and, you know, generate our next... you didn't know about it? Okay, well, it's something we need to address. But the agenda did go out to everyone. Yeah,
Chair.
Councillor Evans was there.
Was anything discussed about the Japanese mathematics on Monday?
Yeah, we started it next week.
No,
You've heard about it, I trust. England have decided that all primary schools should teach mathematics, the Japanese method. I said earlier this week, the English government decided that, or the education department, that all kiddies in primary school should be taught mathematics the Japanese way, and it showed a tremendous advantage. Most of those children in Japan are 3 years ahead of ours.
And it wasn't raised. We focused more on the ICT skills side of things, but I will ask, because Councillor Wintle's asked a question, and sorry, I did come in there and talk about the Monday meeting, but if Kelly would like to respond firstly then to perhaps Councillor Edwards and Councillor Wintle jointly.
I think it's an excellent question, and it probably goes to the heart of what we're trying to do. And it would be a great shame, wouldn't it, if we created a load of great jobs, high skill, high paid, and they didn't go to our young people, and actually we created kind of an import value. You know, that's not what we're looking to achieve here. So I think getting that right is absolutely essential. So there's a group that's convened called the Learning and Skills Innovation Partnership, which is led by Blaenau Gwent. And what the Learning Skills and Innovation Partnership for the Cardiff Capital Region are trying to do is basically ensure that the skills curricula, not just the education stuff, but higher education, further education, are geared up towards this. Now, that's a long old haul, you know, and that's going to take some time. What I did come across the other day was some stuff the Northern Powerhouse have actually published, which is, yes, HE and FE are important, but actually this is about early years. This is about early intervention. This is about going back to nursery school level and ensuring that we have the skills that we need embedded in learning, teaching, practice from that early age. I've sent that on to my colleagues in the Learning Skills and Innovation Partnership, and I think they're really going to have to align their approaches to that, because as I say, if we create high-skilled, high-paid jobs in the region that should just create an import value, then we're not going to be hitting some of the key targets. And not just because they're targets. As I said at the beginning, this isn't just about GVA uplift. This has got to be about making an impact upon all the dependency monies that central government currently channel into Wales. We have to show that we're changing that second, third generational worklessness thing. We have to. So I think, Councillor Wintle, your point for us is probably, it's the central plank of the city deal. If we don't get that right, we've got nothing else, have we? Yeah.
It's very valid points, and again, it goes back to the discussion we also had on Monday around this, which was very useful. Councillor Prosser, then Councillor Watts, then Councillor Dovey.
Yeah, a couple of points. First thing, I agree with the concept of it all. Fantastic, breath of fresh air, looking to the future, doing things differently, being sustainable, etc. So I agree with all that. I'd like to ask if there's a comment on, we talk about scientific research, and we just had Brexit, and there's a lot of scientific organisations which are pessimistic now because of the potential withdrawal, and that they're going to lose the European network support. And the other one is, there's been mention that from Welsh Government, I think as well, that the Metro project could be in jeopardy because of insufficient funds. So there's that bit of it I'd like to have a comment on. And then if I put my councillor's hat on as looking after my constituents, who pay the council tax at the end of the day, they're going to say to me, how do we know we get anything out of it, right? So how do we know we're getting our pound of flesh again? How do we know we are getting benefit from it? So I agree with it all, don't get me wrong, but we have to make sure that the mechanisms the rules of the game, if you like, are such that we have our say and that we are able to justify what has happened. So it's finance is the first bit and accountability is the second.
And it's a really good and relevant question, Councillor Prosser, and you won't be surprised by me saying I just don't know. None of us know at the moment. We're still waiting for these implications to play through. So you'll be aware that the substantive amount of money that was going to come into the city deal for the Metro was going to be paid via WEFO, by the Wales European Funding Office. I'm not quite sure what the current state of play is around that. I think we're waiting to hear. I don't know if you've got a more ready update than me, Kath. But for sure, some of the big higher education institutions, Cardiff University in particular, who we're working very closely with, they are fearful at the moment. We don't quite know what it means for scientific-based research. So the company I was telling you about, IQE, so they're the company that are trailblazing in terms of advanced compound semiconductors. They've got the potential to notify Europe for a project of international significance. So if they can grow their supply network and they can create 6,500 really high-paid, high-skilled jobs in this sector, which will be distinctive globally, a huge opportunity, because we can help match some of that. We can create the leverage through the city deal, but we just don't know if those opportunities are still open to us. And I think what we still don't know is what might come behind them. So if they aren't available, is there going to be another source? Because the bit I think that we felt that we probably need to work harder on in the city deal is, what is our competitive advantage? You know, any economically competitive economy knows what it's good at. It can say the 2 or 3 things that it needs to be renowned for in the world. And I think in our region, you know, we're still trying to define that. You know, what is our comparative advantage? If we were going to sell our unique selling points to the world, what is it? It's not going to be a metro system. A metro system is really important, but it's an enabler. You know, loads of places in the world have those. So what is it that we need to shine with those USPs? In terms of what it means for Monmouthshire, I think the process now is that even though the projects we have to put forward have to be regionally significant, every local authority is going to have the opportunity to put forward a few things that it really needs to have for its region. Now, obviously, those things will need to have scale and they will need to have resonance on a regional basis. You know, they will need to have an outlook to the well-being of future generations. We will get the opportunity to put forward those things which are going to be most important for our county. So drawing on some of those things that I've already talked about, we know, for example, risk capital is a major issue for some of our businesses. The reason why some of our businesses can't even start up, let alone grow, is they can't access that capital at the moment. So even small things like that to encourage more business formations would have a significant impact, because we'd have businesses that suddenly could take on people and they could grow. So I think that side of things is really important. And I think once we get the city deal now signed up to by those 10 local authorities, we'll be in a position to start talking about what kinds of projects and programmes Monmouthshire really needs to be able to uplift productivity and prosperity.
I think that point is vital to the success of the city deal. Given the amount of money that's being invested in this £1.2 billion, you have to take the communities with you, and this whole project should be about supporting those disenfranchised communities, helping those hard-to-reach communities, not just through the projects themselves, but feeling part of the process in terms of how we come to the agreement on what projects we take forward. So, and it does need to be a bit of a bottom-up approach, doesn't it? We do need to go out to communities and have that accountability.
Absolutely. I think all the headlines in the city deal, as they tend to be, are about, you know, big business and being up there, but something that Kath and I are really interested in is the foundational economics and like understanding, you know, what you need to raise aspiration levels, and so people can understand that, you know, these advanced semiconductor jobs, you know, they shouldn't just be for people who've got degrees and, you know, who've gone through engineering courses. They should be about apprenticeships. So one of the conversations that Kath is involved in at the moment is, you know, our apprentice scheme. How could that be scaled up to be the apprentice scheme for the region? So we're creating entry-level opportunities that could grow into full-time, well-paid jobs for people that wouldn't ordinarily get these advantages. So it has to be from the ground up. It can't just be for about those who might benefit anyway.
Okay, I've got Councillor Watson, Councillor Dovey.
Yeah, I guess, you know, my fundamental issue with this is that it's so focused on specifically, it's just like locked into what, it sounds rather patriotic now, but locked into what Wales can do. So, you know, we've got the airport and what is that? But why is it such a kind of, I don't know, there seems to be a taboo subject to kind of look elsewhere. And I know I bang on about Bristol endlessly about, you know, the technology advancements there, but why can't it be about Sevenside? Why can't we kind of copy, you know, it just be, you know, it's just a strange mentality. Why can't we be involved in that and then make it part of something we do as well? I find that really kind of frustrating. I appreciate as well in your speech you managed to get robots, and I've noticed, Kelly, that you always manage to kind of put that aspirational science fiction aspect into everything that you present to us and bang in a couple of robots. I don't really see that myself, but it's interesting what you say. I think it's really exciting. Going back to Alan's point, which is, you're right, it's actually the key point. It starts at school, and that transition, that the education that comes from school. You know, as far as coding's concerned, you know, we should be kind of spreading that out a little bit and encouraging our teenagers who are kind of, you know, like my son, who's only 9 now, but completely obsessed, locks himself away with his iPad. God knows what he's doing on it, but nevertheless, you know, they're obsessed with it. I mean, the historic kind of thing about playing with toys is gone now. What we can do then as a county to encourage that, but it all really comes down to, as you say, having the teachers in school to really infuse those children. So Alan's point is really good. you know, I really don't know, other than talking, what our unique selling point is in Wales, to be honest with you. We're really good at talking, but I really don't understand why we haven't kind of, I don't know why we haven't really kind of come up with it before, but I think technology is an interesting aspect of it. It's about upskilling our workforce, I totally agree with that, but we've got to kind of focus on the kind of sector really that we're aiming at, and that has to kind of correlate with, I don't know really, what Welsh Government want as well. So I you know, I wish I had all the answers, but anyway, I'll leave it there. I'm just wittering on now.
Thanks. I think again, you know, nothing I would disagree with, and I think your point about the Southwest is probably the most important one, because we know, don't we, that, you know, economics is market-led, isn't it? It's not led by local authority boundaries or by national boundaries. Yeah. And one of the things that we got into the City Deal document was that actually we need to be more joined up with the West Country. So I don't know if you saw a few months ago now in the press, Newport and Cardiff got together with Bristol and they launched something called the Great Western Cities Partnership or Initiative. Yeah. I'm not quite sure where that has gone. Kath and I met with Business West in Bristol the other week to talk about how we could forge those links on a Monmouthshire-Bristol level. Yeah. So there are things that we've identified that we could start, even if it's joint marketing. You know, are there things that we could be doing together? So that's definitely something that we could progress. And I think, you know, your point about schools and skills again is a great one. And it could be simple stuff like all the businesses we talk to want young people who are industry ready. You know, not people who've just come out of degrees and, you know, are going to need a year or two cultivation. They want them work ready. And it could be something simple like attaching an employer forum to a school governing body. Yeah. So that employer forum can start to talk to governors and others about, well, actually, is this, we need those young people to be taught, and it needs to start now. So I think there could be little small things that we could be doing as Monmouthshire anyway. Yeah,
but you talk about the small things, but we talked about a rather large thing, and it goes back to, we've kind of gone full circle in a way in as much as, if we can't get super fast broadband,
I agree with
you know, then we're completely, this whole debate is a waste of time. Because if you talk about investment infrastructure, that is the investment infrastructure we should be making now, or, you know, 6 months ago.
I've got Councillor Dovey to come in. Are you happy to come in afterwards, Councillor Winsol, or is it something? Okay, Councillor Dovey, and then I'll come back to...
Thank you, Al. To be truthful, I think much of what I'd written down here has already been said. I think the Great Western Cities is a thing for big, terrific potential, because those cities are very close to us, and that, if that comes to pass, will be part of quite a large, a wider enterprise region. Especially as Sevenside technology region now, from Gloucester right the way down, is the way it is being viewed across the West Country. I've got here as well, there's great opportunity with businesses beginning to relocate from across the water into Wales. Yeah. There's good examples of that, because the overheads are less for them across here. Tailoring education, great. But the other thing as well, it's transport and communications. And you can't duck out of that, because our young people will want to travel, and we've got to have better rail. The metros have got to link up for a start, where in Bristol they're coming out to Pilning. That's just across the water, you know. We ought to be finding a way that the metro here links up with them. I think it's great. It's music to my ears, and as I say, it goes back to a concept that was first thought about in 1968. Different technology now, same concept.
Thanks, Councillor Dovey. Councillor Winton.
Thank you, Chair. Going back on the education side, Bristol University went into robotics and all those things. And that's why it's drawing in all the people there. The only one in Wales is any comparable is Aberystwyth, which is way out on the west coast. You know, people can't get there. you know, it's a right interesting one, because I know I travelled it 3 years. So really, Cardiff University and well, Alteraine, all that they call it now, they need to concentrate onto these modern subjects and not bother with the sports bloody things and think that it's not going to help us. And I hear so much about the Metro, but Metro's not going to help us or Monmouth because it won't come out here. There'll be buses. So you've got to be on a rail line to use it. So it's, again, restricting the greater part of Monmouthshire to take advantage of it. So, you know, once again, the valleys and Cardiff are going to get all the infrastructure. So, you know, I don't hold out a lot of hope for this area, but there are a lot of small companies, like I say that one in Chepstow there, the medical electronics thing. I've got, my neighbour is one of their main people on lasers. So I know a fair bit about what goes on there and some of the equipment they're using. So, but until the universities in Cardiff and Newport and, dare I say it, Treforest, although they are doing some software, improve their capabilities, you know, I think we're going to be struggling.
I think that's a good note of caution. I think the universities are well aware in terms of where they need to be. Cardiff has launched in conjunction with the Alacrity Foundation, they've launched the National Software Academy. So that's trying to reduce the length of degree courses and have them specialise in the kind of software development you'd need for robotics, automation, artificial intelligence. And that's going great guns. And what we want to try and do through the City Deal is scale up the numbers of young people that are going through the software at University Councillor Wintle, but also look at expanding it. So Councillor Dovey's mentioned on a number of occasions cyber security, and that, you know, that kind of Severn Valley link that we have with GCHQ, General Dynamics, Airbus, all of those big companies that are saying, look, we just don't have enough engineers and software specialists to take the jobs that we're creating. So one of the proposals is that we expand that software academy to start looking at cyber security, because cyber security isn't just around, you know, those big defence businesses. We all take devices, smart TVs, heating monitors, baby monitors into our homes, and that presents a threat to all, as you've said many times. So cyber is going to be one of the big growth industries, and we're really well placed as a region to get on the back of that.
Could I just make one more point very briefly? Across in where the Old Power Station used to, Berkeley, sorry, where the old power station used to be, they have, Magnox have sold the big laboratory that was on the edge of that. They had a laboratory there because that was one of the first Magnox ones, so that's where all the research was done. And they've sold that off to Southwest Gloucestershire. And they are turning that now in because they believe they've got to grow their own people in technology and whatnot. Now, they are developing that, and I've been invited to go and have a look at it, and I'm for sure going to do that. But they're developing that as multi-science. It's concentrated on all the modern sciences, and they're working there for that area of the county. I know Gloucestershire is bigger than Monmouthshire, but they're working there for a specialised college which will meet the needs of the new power station, all those sort of developments that there are in the area. I guess we couldn't afford to fund a campus like that, but one has to wonder whether maybe, say, 3 of our counties could get together and consider to fund a campus like that, so that we develop a place of that sort of specialised learning, because it's so important. It's a thought. I don't know whether that's flying a wild kite, but other people are doing it. Why couldn't we?
Councillor Wintle?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I know I've said it before, but why aren't we using some of these industries that are in Monmouthshire? Say these people coming out into the schools. I'm mentoring some of the classes, you know, sort of, and assisting the teachers with the IT skills. You know, that, because they're far superior to our teachers.
That was one of the actions to come out of Monday, and it's something I think that already does take place, but we positively encouraged more engagement from the private sector and vice versa with our school system around the STEM and ICT agenda. So definitely something that was noted in Monday's meeting as well. So yeah, very valid. Members, unless there's any further questions, the one suggestion I've got is that we at some point maybe might want to visit one of the sort of tech industries that are the sort of things that we're looking to focus on as Party City Deal, because some of these sort of businesses, particularly for someone like myself, are quite alien to me in terms of what they're trying to achieve, and it'd be quite useful to know if that's where we're focusing our efforts as both a council and as a wider city region. Then it would be useful to maybe see some of that work firsthand. So, I mean, you mentioned the Mitel site and the semiconductor business. It might be useful. Yeah, so perhaps we could suggest them just to go along as an informal delegation, just to go and visit. Yeah, that'd be good. So if we could make. Yeah. Okay.
I think children should realise that.
And we'll make sure this stays on the forward work programme, which we'll come on to now anyway. So thank you to Kelly and to Kath for your contributions on that item. That's really helpful to have an update. So moving on to the next agenda item, which is our scrutiny forward work programme. Yeah, we're looking likely we're going to have to move the 1st of September meeting. And we've got to, if it's okay with members, we'll look to move that to the 23rd of September, 26th or the 27th or the 28th. So I don't know if anyone's got their diaries and they can check if those are... I haven't even got mine. I can't think what's...
Just to give members some context, I've had a discussion with Mark, and this time last year you scrutinised the annual performance review before it went to Welsh Government, and you found that very helpful. This year Mark's got a suggestion to make in terms of some scrutiny of that, but there are very specific timescales, and the 1st of September that work wouldn't be ready, but we could look to hold a meeting between either the 23rd and sort of the 27th of September. So the dates that we've got available, any time on the 23rd, but that's a Friday, or Monday the 26th in the afternoon, or Tuesday the 27th in the afternoon.
Chair, could I advise that on the Friday the 23rd, we've got an Armed Forces Stakeholder Day in this chamber at 9:30. Okay?
It's Councillor Prosser. I mean, I'm going to propose the afternoon of Tuesday the 27th, but... So it sits well. We can, yeah. Is that all right? So if we can make a note then that the 1st of September meeting is postponed. So if you could remove that. Yep. So, sorry? Yes. We could do. The 1st of September is cancelled, well, postponed until the 27th of September, and we could start at possibly 1. We've got coordinating board at 10, so I don't think we could probably do any earlier, just in case that did go on. Yeah, so if we did a 12:30 pre-meeting and a start at 1 o'clock, would that suit? Is that okay with Democratic Services and Mark? Sorry, Mark, I didn't have people last year, and you're the one. That's okay with you.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful, Chair. I suspect we might have quite a lot to talk about.
We could even bring it further forward, but I just worry with the coordinating board, that's all. Yeah. Okay. Stick to 12:30 as a pre-meeting and 1 p.m. then as a meeting start time. Okay, so that'll be the next meeting then after the August break. So we don't have any further meetings now before then. So unless there's anything you want to raise under the Cabinet Work Programme, which is of interest. Yes, you're organising it, Armand. No, we were talking about going, as part of the city deal, issues we've just spoken about, that would be good to go and visit one of the businesses that we're trying to promote or align ourselves with, as you know, in terms of our future planning. We haven't agreed that. We're going to explore options with the Mytal site and the semiconductor business there. Yeah, we won't hold a meeting there, it'll just be a visit. Okay? Yeah, because we need the live streaming, I think. That's the reason why we need to keep the meetings in this building. So, right. Yes. It should be. I watched back the other day and it was working. So. Not this committee, I didn't watch, but it was planning committee. Okay, so if there's nothing further then, thank you very much, members. Have a good summer break. See you in September, if not before.